There you go. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this meeting of the Metro Inner Development Assessment Panel. I declare the meeting open at 9:35 a.m. and I acknowledge that we're hosting this meeting on the traditional land of the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation. We acknowledge the Aboriginal people as the traditional custodians of Western Australia, pay respect to elders past and present, and the ongoing connection between people, land, waters, and community. This meeting will be run in accordance with DAP Standing Orders 2024 under the DAP Regulations 2011. The meeting is being recorded and live streamed on the DAP website in accordance with Regulation 42A of the DAP Regulations. Panel members may refer to technical devices throughout the meeting to assist them in considering the information before them. I'd like to take the opportunity to introduce our members present today in the room. My name is Dale Page, I'm the presiding member today, and in the room with me on my left I have Karen Hyde, Deputy Presiding Member, and Francesca Lafanti, Specialist Member. With us online for Part B, City of Canning, we have Mayor Patrick Hall and Councillor Ben Kunza. Welcome to you both. We don't have anyone with us today from the City of South Perth, but we will have for Party City of Nedlands, Councillor Fergus Bennett and Councillor Blaine Brackenridge. Item 2, apologies. We have apologies from Councillor Glenn Cridland, our local government DAP member, City of South Perth, and Councillor Bronwyn Wall, local government DAP member, City of South Perth. We also have apologies from Councillor Rebecca Coughlin, local government DAP member, City of Nedlands, and Councillor Kerry Smith, local government DAP member, City of Nedlands. Members on leave of absence, there are nil. Item 4, noting of minutes. Please note that minutes of all previous meetings are available on the DAP website. Moving on then to Part B, the City of Canning. Item 1, declaration of due consideration. Panel members need to have considered all the documentation within Part B of the agenda and the Part B related information. Could I please confirm by a show of hands that all panel members have considered all information? Thank you. Item 2, disclosures of interest. No disclosures of interest have been received to this point. Do any members wish to make declarations of interest in relation to this item? And as usual, could I check with our local government members whether this application has been before you at a council meeting or briefing?
Madam Chair, no on both counts.
Right.
From
Thank
me
you so much. Do any other members wish to make any declarations of interest in relation to the item? No, thank you. No. No? Excellent.
No,
thank you very much. Moving then on to item 3, our Form 1 DAP application for today, 3.1, Lot 11, Number 4, Oak Street, Cannington, Residential Building Community Housing, DAP number 24/02789. We have 3 presenters on this item today. We have Sheldon Turner from Total Project Management speaking in favour of the recommendation in the report, Michael Smith from Silver Thomas Hanley Architects speaking in favour of the recommendation in the report, and Renee Young from Element speaking in favour of the recommendation in the report. Presenters, I remind you, in accordance with clause 482 of the DAP Standing Orders 2024, your presentation is limited to 3 minutes today. We've read all the written documentation you've provided us, so we encourage you to focus on the key points that you can to get across within the designated 3-minute time frame, and then the panel members will be able to ask you questions at the end of your presentation. Sheldon.
Thank you. Thank you. So just on behalf of the proponent Rafa, I'd just like to thank the City of Canning for their collaboration through the process of this development. The development will house the Andrew Russell Living Project, which Rafa has recently launched, which is an emergency housing for veterans who are experiencing homelessness. 5% or over 5% of ADF veterans experience homelessness, which is 3 times the general population, and up to 55% of those have some sort of PTSD from obviously their job or their previous line of work. So Rafa is just, I guess, looking forward to proceeding with the development, hopefully, off the back of today's meeting. we have funding from Lottery West to the tune of $5 million, and RAFA is underwriting the remaining funding for the project. So we're looking to get into construction straight away, and it's going to provide a very significant help for the veterans community within Western Australia. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions of this presenter? Mayor Hall, do you have any questions of this presenter?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I did actually have a question just in relation to the general conditions. Did you want me to ask that question now?
If it's of this presenter, sure.
Yeah, I did. I wanted to know to ask a question in relation to general condition number 10 on page 4 of the report in relation to, I believe that this has been raised as a concern by the applicant. This is a provision for 20 bicycle bays for a development that is taking care of itinerant homeless veterans. And I'm wondering about the need, the necessity for the requirement. I wondered whether or not the applicant was supportive of the criterion. If not, I would be proposing an amendment during further discussions, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Mayor Hall. Would you like to respond?
Yeah, thank you, through the chair. Yeah, that we did raise that with the city for over the last couple of weeks when we've seen the conditions, and we've actually resolved a reduction and agreed that with the city already. So I believe that's been sent through.
Yes.
I thought
was that part
previously.
of the addendum that was
Yes,
sent
as part of the addendum, it's been reduced to 11 bicycle bays, which we're comfortable with, although we probably agree it's still high, but we're comfortable with that number and agreed that with the city.
Does that respond to your question, Mayor Hall? The fact that they've reduced it to 11, they've agreed that?
Thank you for the opportunity to respond, Madam Chair. Partially, I think there seems to have been a compromise reached there because the city obviously is supportive of the R codes. My question is whether or not the applicant actually supports the necessity for bicycle bays at this particular development. I know they've come to a compromise position that they may feel they needed to reach, but my question is really whether they feel there's a necessity considering the built form and the tenants for that premises.
Sure. Yeah. Again, through the chair, yes, we would agree that it's not required. Ultimately, the residents or the people that will be residing there, it's short stay accommodation. It's not long term. They're homeless veterans. They don't have a vehicle or a bicycle or anything, nor would we be providing them with one. We feel that there's sufficient space there within their apartments if they were going to use one, but we don't believe they would. So yes, we would agree that they're not required, and if the panel was willing to reduce that number, we would be open to that.
Thank you. Any other questions
Madam Chair.
for this presenter, Mayor Hall?
Not from me. Thank you.
No? Okay. Any questions of this presenter, Councillor Kunze?
No questions from me. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. Karen Hyde speaking. This is just by way of context. There is some overshadowing of the adjoining lot. Do you, at this point, have any awareness of what the purpose of that adjoining lot will be in terms of future development?
To the south or the vacant lot at this stage?
Yeah.
Not at this moment, no. There is potential. It is owned by by RAFA as well. You may be aware.
Yeah.
There is hope that this program could be extended in the future, and therefore that could potentially be where it's extended. But we're just unsure of the nature of having more of this accommodation type in the one location. So at this stage, it's just earmarked to remain vacant as a land holding for the future. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And I think Renee's going to talk about conditions, so I have another question about conditions, but I might leave that to your presentation. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Any questions? All right, thank you very much, Sheldon. Michael, over to you.
Also like to thank the panel and the councillors and the City of Canning officers for the process that we've been through over the last 12 months. I was going to give a bit of a run through of the development and just highlight the design features. So I'll skip the first couple of slides. Sheldon's already covered what the nature of the ARVL program is. So on this slide, ground floor, Lake Street, just wanted to point out the legible entry to the support facilities and with the 2 levels of self-contained units above for the mix of dwelling types. And on the ground floor, the key feature here, just the landscape courtyard, allowing natural light penetration through into the common spaces on the ground floor and all the cross ventilation to the units and circulation spaces on the floor above. So here, yeah, this is a typical upper level plan. Note again those open walkways, the cross ventilation, the northern light penetration. And I'd also note that on this drawing, and Renee will go into further detail on this, but this relates to the condition with the overlooking of the driveway. And I'd note that the current design has extensive full height visual screening. You can see in the areas not covered, more than 50% of each of those north facing balconies already has that screening. So the condition, which again, Renee will talk more to, is referring only to the small sections of balcony either side without the screening, and noting that the cone of vision falls entirely on the adjoining driveway. And cut off in the corner, but you can see that's the screening, full height vertical screening on the balconies, just screen bottom right corner. I'll just skip these next few slides as you've already read the submission, just to arrive at the end and speak about the local authority engagement with the design review panel. So we had an early engagement meeting with the City of Canning planners in February 2024, and then engaged early with the design review panel with 2 pre-lodgement design reviews and a third one post-lodgement, and then a chair review after a RFI from the City of Canning. The design team have been receptive to DRP and planner advice throughout, and we've explored many options and made changes across the course of the 4 iterations, the feedback of the DRP. And I would note that the DRP recommendations at DR4 stage note that the proposal is supported across all 10 design principles. Thank you again for the time to present.
Thank you very much. If we could close the presentation, that would be wonderful. Mayor Hall, do you have any questions of this presenter?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kunze, any questions?
No questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any other member have questions for this presenter?
Mine's for later, next presenter.
Sorry?
Mine's for next presenter.
Right. Thank you very much. All right. Thank you, Michael. Renee, over to you.
Good morning, DAP members. I'll take my presentation as read and would like to focus on the conditions that we're asking to be changed. I'd also note the email from Shaquille Mookbook from the City of Canning with the condition changes that we've agreed that were registered on the DAP minutes. As mooted by Michael, there are 2 conditions that we would like to ask the DAP to consider deleting. The first is condition 12, which requires permanent screening to meet the R code screening requirements to the north-facing balconies. We've worked really hard in the design to achieve these north-facing balconies, and that was certainly something that was encouraged by the DAP to get northern sunlight. So to fully screen those balconies when we say it's not required as per the element objectives of overlooking from the R codes seems to be counterintuitive to the design response for this development. So the element objectives for overlooking focus on private open spaces and habitable rooms. The cones of vision, as we've demonstrated in this diagram, fall within a common driveway. And so those cones of vision shown there are the 6 metre cones of vision, which there's a further 3 metres beyond that to get to the face of the building. They're also secondary balconies for those dwellings. So they're a balcony that's at the upper floor level adjoining bedrooms. The floor plan, which was included in the City of Canning's agenda item for today, shows that floor plan of the upper level. These apartments on the other side of us have their living areas at the ground floor with a north-facing courtyard on the northern side of the dwelling. And so we say the separation, despite the kinds of vision going beyond the property boundary, they are on a common driveway and not a sensitive area. We're also in an RACO area, so we are in an area where higher density is anticipated. And on small, narrow lots such as this, there has to be some consideration of view sharing. There's a view of the common driveway and those upper floor balconies, which we will be facing. And this, there's also, and the aerial in the top right does show those north facing courtyards at ground floor level. Oh, sorry, it's covered by that. I think you can see it now. So that's the adjoining property there, common boundary where our kind of visions fall. And it's just, I guess, interesting comparing the separation distance that's required here. We have our code's acceptable outcome is 6 metres from face of balcony from private habitable space to private habitable space. In lower coded areas, it's 7.5 metres. We would achieve that 7.5 metres if you allow for the common driveway. So
now you're at time, so
sorry, okay,
wrap up very
will,
quickly.
Yes, quickly focus on public art, as Sheldon mentioned. So we're also asking the DAP to delete condition 20 for public art. It's a policy document, so a due regard document, given the nature of the development, which is funded by Lottery West grants and charitable donations. We just see the money as being better spent onto the ongoing programs and the development, and the significant community benefit being delivered by this project warrants a discrepancy.
Is it 30 rather than 20?
Oh, maybe I made a typo.
That's the question I had as well.
Yeah, sorry. Yes, it is 30. That's a typo. Thank you. Thank you, Karen.
All right, thank you. If we could close the presentation.
Yes. Stop sharing. Yeah. Thank you.
Mayor Hall, do you have any questions of this presenter?
No, I don't. I think I asked a question previously around condition 10 that hasn't been raised during this. No, I have no further questions in relation to that.
Thank you. Councillor Kunze, any questions of this presenter?
Not of this presenter. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much. Any other member?
Thank you. If I could pursue the reasoning for the deletion of condition 30 a little bit more, Renee, please. What's the rationale behind that?
The rationale is really because this is a registered charity that's delivering the project, and whilst the public art policy is about delivering public benefit through art, we see this as delivering public benefit through other means, which is really the provision of a facility for homeless veterans. And so that community benefit outweighs, I guess, the fundamental essence of it is that in a charity project, funds are of the utmost consideration, and in an environment of rising construction cost, every $50,000 component, and we're looking at, I've got the amounts quoted in here based on the $7.5 million cost of development, we're looking at $75,000 or $63,000 if it was cash in lieu. We just see that as being better spent in providing both ongoing programs to the people who will be living here and the development itself.
All right, thank you for that answer. Just a couple of other minor ones. Condition 19 regarding sustainability deflects to advice note 9, which includes other things required. Are you quite clear on what's required under that sustainability approach?
We did provide a sustainability matrix to the city during the application process.
Okay, I might ask the city further on that, if I may, in a while. Second question. No, I think that's it for me. I'll leave it there. Thank you very much.
We're comfortable with that list in
You are?
advice note 10.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question specifically in relation to condition 12. I note that your design provides large balconies, 29 square metres, to the 2-bedroom units both on the upper levels. My question is more around both the size and location of balconies, given that essentially unit 6 or 2.6, that unit sits adjoining your ground level communal landscape area. And I'm interested in understanding your design and form choices that resulted in the balcony being of configuration that it is, rather than having an element of it looking into the internally into the site, and therefore not necessarily looking out over the neighbouring property. And so I'm interested in that, and some further commentary around the screening that's been requested in condition 12 in the context of your design choice.
I think firstly, well, it might be best to, it is worth noting that those 2-bedroom dwellings have been designed for future separation. Potentially you'll see that they've been designed almost like a pigeon pair. So there's the potential that they could become 2 1-bedroom units in the future, should that be required to meet the demands of the population. But I'll defer to Michael on the design of the balconies per se.
I think we're focusing on the northern, getting as much northern light to these units as possible. North isn't, so north is, so they're sort of northwest facing, and using the courtyard to get light deep into the floor plate. It's also structural grid issues, and having a car park underneath, and having the balcony facing in that direction makes sense, you know, with all those considerations. And I know we have windows opening into the living areas on that unit, but we didn't feel that having balconies wrapping around that side would be beneficial to the development. In terms of getting the northern aspect deep into the floor plate of these units, particularly as Renee said, they're going to be divided in half in future. Should that need arise, I think the wind balconies on the north side is the best outcome.
Thank you.
Yeah.
No, that was my question.
All right, thank you. We have with us today Petronella Tandroyan, Austin Donahue and Shaquille McCool with us from the City of Canning. Are there any questions any member would like to ask the city officers? Mayor Hall, do you have any questions for the officers?
I do, Madam Chair. Thanks for the opportunity. I just wanted to ask the officers in relation to the conversation they heard in relation to conditions 12 and 19, whether the officers believe those two actually speak to each other in relation to the requirement for an environmentally sustainable design, yet the provision of the screening in 12 would perhaps not be something that would support a 6-star sustainable principle under the guidelines. Do you see a conflict there between 12 and 19 for what the city is trying to achieve?
Thank you for the question, Mayor Hall. I'll go through condition 12 first, and then I'll respond relating to condition 19. So relating to condition 12, visual privacy, the city does not support the applicant's recommendation to delete condition 12, which has been recommended to the panel to ensure the development achieves element objective 3.5, visual privacy of the R Codes Volume 2, which requires the orientation and design of buildings, windows and balconies to minimise direct overlooking of habitable rooms and private outdoor living areas of neighbouring properties. The 6-metre cone of vision required privacy setback to adjoining sites as outlined in Table 3.5 of Clause 3.5 only relates to the setback within the subject site to the lot boundary and doesn't take into account the neighbouring property. This is outlined in Figure A7.3C, measuring privacy setbacks using cones of vision in this A7's explanatory figures section on page 131 of the R Codes Volume 2. In this development, a 3 metre visual privacy setback is provided in lieu of 6 metres, and as such, the proposed development does not meet acceptable outcome A3.5.1. As the acceptable outcome has not been achieved, the proposed visual privacy of the apartments 1.6, 1.7 and 1.8 on level 1 and apartments 2.6, 2.7 and 2.8 on level 2 are required to be assessed against element objective O3.5.1, which seeks to ensure that the orientation and design of buildings, windows and balconies minimise direct overlooking of habitable rooms and private outdoor living areas of neighbouring properties. As outlined in the city's RER, the proposed orientation and design of the balconies of apartments 1.6, 1.7 and 1.8 on level 1 and apartments 2.6, 2.7 and 2.8 on level 2 provide direct overlooking of the balconies and bedrooms of the existing apartments located at 6 Oak Street. As the proposed balconies do not provide the 6 metre required setback as required under acceptable outcome A3.5.1, and as the proposed orientation and design of the balconies does not minimise direct overlooking to habitable rooms and private outdoor living areas of the adjoining apartments at 6 Oak Street, the city has recommended the condition be imposed to provide permanent screening to the balconies to mitigate that direct overlooking into the balconies and to the bedrooms of the adjoining properties. As the balconies, as proposed, have not been sited, orientated, offset or articulated to restrict direct overlooking as required under acceptable outcome A.5.3, the city can only support the development in its current form through that provision of permanent screening as recommended in condition 12. The city does not consider the provision of permanent screening up to 1.6 metres to impact access to maintaining daylight or solar access, as the balconies are provided with raked ceilings and are also provided with large windows to increase sunlight into living areas as shown in the applicant's section daylight access plan, which is in the development plans. And as the architect previously mentioned, and are also north facing, they will allow solar access to be easily accessed from the balconies and get solar access into the kitchen living areas of each apartment. It also must be noted that the proposal could have been designed to provide 6 compliant 6 metre visual privacy setbacks to meet the acceptable outcome through an integrated development approach over both number 2 and number 4 Oak Street, which is the subject site, which the applicant both owns and Sheldon made reference to earlier. This was recommended by the design review panel back in April 2024 prior to the development application being lodged. And this is included in Principle 1 context and character commentary as identified in attachment 6, which is page 165 of the agenda. The city considers condition 12 to be appropriate and privacy screening in this instance is needed to ensure that the residential amenity at 6 Oak Street is maintained and direct overlooking from the proposed development is mitigated. The objections received relating to visual privacy concerns from number 6 Oak Street are considered valid, and the recommended condition is considered appropriate to address the concerns of neighbouring properties and ensure the element objective to minimise direct overlooking of habitable rooms and private outdoor living areas of the neighbouring properties is achieved. From the city's officer's view, we consider this condition is recommended and should be retained. Just to add to Mayor Hall's question relating to condition 19, the sustainability report was raised through the design review panel commentary. And as Renee mentioned, that they had provided a matrix, but the design review panel wanted to provide further details or see further details of how the overall development will provide those sustainability outcomes. And through those commentary with the applicant, the DRP and the city, the applicant was happy to condition that and provide that report at building permit stage, which the city was happy to support.
Thank you, Austin. Very comprehensive response, part of which covered Mayor Hall's question. Are you comfortable with that response, Mayor Hall?
Madam Chair, I lost the will to live about 5 minutes into that response. I'm not sure, but yeah, I think it did cover it off.
It was a very fulsome response, and it covered off on a couple of other questions that would have been asked, I think. So that there was a bit in there that addressed the potential or conflict between conditions 12 and 19. So that's good. Thank you.
Yeah,
Austin.
I'm happy with the response.
Any
Thank
other
you.
questions of the city officers? Councillor Kunza.
Thank you, Chair. I just had a question regarding the request to delete condition 30 related to public art. The city's response was basically that it was a $7.5 million development, and so felt as though that the requirement should still apply. I just wondered if you could elaborate on the city's position. Obviously, this is two-thirds grant funded and the rest funded by RAFA. Why the city doesn't deem it suitable to remove that condition?
Thank you, Councillor Kunz, and I'll try not to bore you this time. Yes, in terms of condition number 30, the city doesn't support the applicant's recommendation to delete condition 30, which has been recommended to the panel to ensure the development provides public art on site, or alternatively a cash in lieu contribution in accordance with the city's local planning policy and 0.9 developer funded public art. The main objectives of that public art policy is to improve the attractiveness and functionality of the city's built environment, develop and promote community identity within the city, increase social, cultural and economic value of the city, increase public awareness of the value of art and design, and create local landmarks. The policy is applied to all development applications where the cost exceeds 4 million across the city, and this condition has consistently been applied and imposed by the design review panel. All development, whether it's not-for-profit, commercial or residential, has the ability to improve the attractiveness and functionality of the city's built environment. The provision of public art has the benefits of providing attractive buildings for residents and also helping integrate the development and helping to promote community identity within the immediate locality of Oak Street and indeed across the Canning city centre. The DAP has consistently imposed this condition on a number of community purpose, special disability accommodation, educational establishments and not-for-profit developments, including on the 16th of July 2024 for a community purpose building at 2 Headley Place in Bentley, and for special disability accommodation on the 3rd of October 2024 at 168 Wharf Street, Cannington, and 19 and 21 Tate Street, Bentley, all within the city of Canning. The city considers there's no planning merit to remove this condition on the proposed justification that the public art funds can be better utilised by the applicant in the future management of the building. The city notes that the DAP did delete a public art condition for a proposed change of use for an existing apartment building into a community purpose use and associated renovations. But the DAP had provided commentary for that deletion that it was only considered to be minor works to the existing building, which was constructed in the 1960s. And that development cost was much lower at only 2.7 million. The approved development in that case didn't result in any change to the existing height or footprint of the original 2-storey building. The approved development referenced by the applicant as justification for removing the proposed condition would not require a public art contribution under the city's policy itself. It does not meet the 4 million threshold and is not considered a comparable development in that case. In this instance, the application proposes to construct a new 3-storey development comprising 16 apartments on vacant and undeveloped lot within Canning city centre, which will have a lasting impact on the urban form in the locality for many years to come. The city considers that the provision of public art on site in this new development or via a cash in lieu contribution will provide greater community benefit to the wider community and help deliver and promote community identity within the city. And as such, the condition from the city's officers is recommended for it to be retained.
Thank you, Austin. Councillor Kunza, any other questions?
Yes, thank you, Austin, for that comprehensive response. I just wanted to know, I don't recall whether they did, but did those not-for-profit examples that you cited, did they actually make a request that the city forego its requirement to include a public art, or did they just accept it?
Thank you, Councillor Kunza. The applications that I've all referenced have just accepted it because it was a endorsed council policy, and will be seeking to integrate it into their development.
Thank you. Anything else, Councillor Kunza?
Nothing further. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Member Levant.
Thank you. I have questions in relation to condition 12. My first question in relation to condition 12, according to the plans I have in front of me, particularly elevation, which is in the documentation, the southeast elevation, sorry, the northeast elevation, I beg your pardon. It includes representation of trees on the site. Do you have any commentary about landscaping treatment in the context of screening? And I'm particularly talking about level 1 there.
In terms of providing the appropriate screening for the minimising the direct overlooking into level 1?
Yes.
Is that what the question relates to?
From level 1, yes.
In my recollection of the volume 2 is that we wouldn't be able to, I suppose, confirm that landscaping would provide that level of screening along the boundary itself. It wouldn't be considered permanent in nature, and so the R codes require permanent screening to be provided, which will restrict that overlooking into next door. While landscaping is shown on the plan, we don't have any confirmation or certainty that the height would be achieved within that landscaping and the permanency of that landscaping to abate that visual privacy concern.
Thank you. My second question, and presiding member, I have a question back to the applicant straight after this, if I may. On level 1 and 2, again in relation to condition 12, I see, I'm looking at the same set of plan, northeast elevation. I see the vertical aluminium blades, the privacy screen, and I also see a balustrade that has open metal coated balustrade. Could you give me your comments on screening, particularly on those 2 levels, if there are balcony change of material which had obscuring at the level it's shown on here, whilst it may not prevent direct overlooking from somebody standing, it would improve a level of privacy or view in a seating setting on a balcony. Can you provide any comments on your view about screening balcony treatment, balustrade treatment at the height level shown on the plan in relation to addressing elements of overlooking or even perceived overlooking?
The city's happy to consider any options that the applicant would bring forward to try and improve visual privacy within those balconies themselves up to the required height, which is 1.6 in the R codes themselves. So if they wanted to provide visual privacy screening through angular blades, for example, which I think you're referring to.
Sorry, no, sorry. Can I just interrupt you there? My apologies to interrupt you. I wasn't referring to an increase in height on the balcony. My question related to the balcony at the same height, but using a different material that was not see-through at that same level. That was my question. I was clear about your point in relation to balcony, your comment about balcony screening to a height of 1.6, but my question was about a lower level at the balcony level, which I think is 1.2, 1.1.
So at 1.2, it would provide, I suppose, improved visual privacy when somebody's sitting down, but all they have to do is stand up, and then there would be that direct overlooking to the apartments next door. So ultimately it helps, but it doesn't solve the problem.
Thank you. Any other
Thank
questions?
you. I have a question directly, same questions directly to the applicant. My questions to yourselves, particularly in the context of my question to the officers, could you provide me comments and clarity about landscaping and height, growth and height? That was a commentary provided by the city officers. And my second question is in relation to the balcony treatment that you have chosen, which is open balcony. balustrade? And what are your comments again in relation to any different form of treatment that might be at same height level, but excludes a direct looking at certain points of the balcony, some level of screening on that, different screening on that?
Yeah, in relation to the first point, unfortunately, we don't have Plan E here with us today to respond. We note that the tree on that boundary has been specified as a narrow evergreen tree. We're probably not qualified to comment on what height that may grow to, other than to say on the concept planting plan that Plan E has included, they are all reasonably tall looking trees, if I can use some common language from a town planner, not an architect.
And I think the thinking was to have a
Page
narrow.
50, are you talking about page 50 of the agenda?
We actually have our landscape architect online. Would it be okay if I spoke to that question?
Yes.
Andrew,
Good morning, JDAP members. Yeah, Andrew Baranowski here. I'm here for the Henley meeting, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
how's that? Andrew, sorry, did you hear the question from member?
I did. I did. Yeah. So the tree species that have been proposed, particularly on that northern elevation and within the courtyard, are anticipated to reach between 6 and 8 metres in height in time. And they're intended to go in of a reasonable size, 500 litre, 300 litre, which means they'll already be around about the 3 to 4 metres height from day one. And the intention of those trees are kind of upright columnar trees, waterhouses, hymenosperms are all intended as a to achieve some sort of level of screening and privacy to those the adjoining properties.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Did you want to respond to the balcony treatments, like obscuring materials, etc.?
Yeah, we'd be happy to consider an obscure material.
May I just say, like we are already screening the balconies to 50% of their, their width. We feel with the type of resident and the occupant that's going in there, if we screen that all the way along, it's almost, providing a confined space as opposed to an outlet where they probably will stay in this apartment for most of their time while they're there, 2 to 3 months. They won't go outside much. They want a safe environment to feel safe. So I guess we're open to suggestions. We ultimately just want to get this thing built. So, and I think you've probably seen the difficulty we've had for the last 12 months.
Thank you. Any other questions?
No, thank you. I do. This is to the city,
Yes,
isn't it?
it is.
Yes, thank you. To the city officers, advice note 16, which talks to the operational management plan. Would that wording of advice note 16 be more appropriate actually as part of condition 31?
So you're referencing the lighting plan?
No,
Operational management.
advice note 16 refers to the operational management plan, which is condition 31. But the wording, the way in which advice note 16 is worded, looks for a level of certainty. And my question is, would it be better practice to include that wording as part of condition 31?
Yeah, the city is supportive of that.
Thank you. That was my only question.
All right, I have a few minor questions if you don't mind. So condition 1 is no longer needed, given the very recent gazettal of the new Metro Region Scheme Act. Are you happy for us to delete it?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Condition 4 requires a deed of easement to be prepared to the satisfaction of your.
Madam Chair, I can't hear the discussion at all. Am I the only one that seems to have been muted? I can see your mouths moving. I can't hear a thing.
Councillor Kunze, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear everything. Thanks.
It's on your end, Mayor Hall.
Can there be a subject sent to him?
Should he go out and come back in?
We just can't talk to him. Can somebody from the city just check in with Mayor Hall and let him know that it's on his end?
Sorry, I can't hear anything. Perhaps somebody from the Secretariat could give me a call and.
Yeah. We're getting IT to go up now, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
It's coming at the briefing. Just let him know. Just can't hear us. Oh, type a message.
I think order's been restored, Madam Chair.
Can you hear me now?
I can.
Excellent. All right. Did you hear my question about condition 1?
I didn't hear it at all.
Okay, I just asked the city whether they still need condition 1 because of the recent gazettal of the new MRS Act. So that condition's not required anymore, and they said they're happy for us to delete it. Condition 4 requires a deed of easement to be prepared to the satisfaction of the city solicitors. They're a third party, effectively. Would you be happy for us to amend this condition so the easement is to the city's satisfaction in consultation with your solicitors?
Yeah.
Thank you. Condition 11 requires redundant crossovers to be removed and reinstatement of the verge, but it isn't clear about when this is to occur. Would you like us to add the wording prior to occupation?
That's fine.
If the panel decides to retain condition 12 relating to screening, could you please clarify when the screening needs to be installed? We've lost Mayor Hall again. Can you hear us, Mayor Hall? No. Let's just wait a second.
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Right. Okay, so if the panel decides to retain condition 12.
That will be prior to occupation.
Sorry?
Prior to occupation.
Let's just hold on a second until we know we have Mayor Hall back. Still in the Zoom, his camera's just off. Can you hear me now?
I can. Thank you very much for your patience. I've got an IT whiz kid here, so we're just sorting it out. All done. Thank you.
That's
I'm back.
happens to all of us. So I asked a question about the timing of screening in the event we decide to keep condition 12, because currently it states prior to a building permit, which is not possible. The city has confirmed that that should be prior to occupation. And then condition 20 relates to the schedule of colours and materials. Would you be happy for us to add the words to the satisfaction of the city at the end of the condition?
Yes, that's fine.
Condition is that? Condition 20 relating to the schedule of colours and materials. Right, that's all the questions I have. Any last questions of the city before I move to the report? No? Okay, then let's move to the report on this item. Can I seek a mover and seconder for the recommendation in the responsible authority report before you? Anyone wish to move? Thank you, Member Hyde. Does anyone wish to second the motion? Thank you, Member Lafant. Member Hyde, would you like to speak?
Certainly. Might I just check first and foremost that it's possible to move that with the addenda that was sent through from the city, which I think provided some clarity around conditions 6, 8, 9 and 10. Are you happy for that to be with the seconder comfortable?
Are you happy to include those administrative changes?
Would you like me to propose them as amendments?
But I am indicating that the additional material that we were provided in the addendum refers to 12 bicycle parking bays. And the discussion during the meeting was around
So we might deal with that as a subsequent amendment. Does that work for you?
Thank you, yes.
Great. All right, so for now, what's happening is Member Hyde and Member Lafanti are moving and seconding the recommendation in the report with those minor administrative changes that were sent through by the city to conditions 6, 8, 9 and 10. Any subsequent changes to those conditions following those minor admin changes will be dealt with via amendment. Back to you.
Thank you, presiding member. I am very comfortable with this development proposal as a residential building. I think it is an appropriate classification. I find that it is generally compliant with the primary development controls and the concept of the activity centre plan. Much of the design and technical detail has been thoroughly assessed and subject to conditions. Some variations are sought, but I'm supportive of those. With the discussion that has taken place, however, presiding member, I would like to propose some amending motions.
Sure.
I'll start with perhaps the first and easiest of my amending motions, and that is to move the wording of advice note 16 to be the second paragraph of condition 31.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for that amendment? Thank you, Member Lafanti. Do you wish to speak further to that?
I don't really think I need to. I think it simply provides clarity and certainty around what's required for the OMP. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Lafanti. Do you wish to speak the seconder?
No, it's been provided clearly.
Does any other member wish to speak to that specific amendment? No, let's put that to a vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Back to you.
Thank you. I would also like to propose an amending motion that we delete condition 12, the requirement to screen the northern balconies.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for that amendment? Thank you, Member Lafanti.
I'm proposing this as an amending motion because I do take the view that these occupants are perhaps somewhat vulnerable, that access to daylight, natural light and an outlook is important. I think on the evidence presented and measuring from the plans, there is adequate separation between this development and the nearby development. I understand the city's assessment process. However, I think it unreasonable to imply that that level of distance does not give adequate visual privacy, particularly in the context of the density coding for the activity centre. I also take some comfort from the landscape plan and noting the proposals for the landscape along the boundary, which I think will somewhat soften or interrupt any direct outlook, but provide a much more appropriate means of providing any screening or interruption to direct sight lines. That said, I am happy overall that there is adequate separation distance to meet the overall requirements of the R code. So.
Thank you for that. Member Lafanti, a seconder to the amendment?
Yes, I am supportive of the deletion of condition 12, having explored in further detail during today's meeting the specific elements relating to the screening of those balconies on level 1 and level 2, including further information that's been provided in relation to the design choices as well as the occupants. I would also acknowledge that the building is a use classification of a residential building, which is slightly different than a regular residential development. And I acknowledge that the type of occupants, the form of the development that we have before us, is dealing with a level of vulnerable members, and that the proposal does provide a significant level of screening to the portion of the balcony that sits at 2.6 or thereabouts metres from the boundary. I would also concur with the mover that there is adequate separation to the balconies on the adjoining property, noting that it does fall into the driveway, but I'm satisfied that the functionality of the driveway, as in accordance to the information we receive, doesn't operate as a public open space or private open space for the occupants of the adjoining development. And I'm satisfied with the additional material that's been provided in relation to landscaping that includes a level of trees at the level of height level that would also minimise, they won't prevent, but it will minimise levels of overlooking, creating the development as in a suitable form in this particular instance.
Thank you very much. Does any other member wish to speak for or against this amendment? No? All right, in that case, let's put this amendment to the vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously.
Thank you. Further amending motion I would like to propose would be to delete condition 30, which relates to the public art contribution.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for that proposed amendment? Thank you, Member Lafanti.
I note that the city has a public art policy, and I applaud it for having such. I do recognise that public art is an important part of our environmental landscape and does have community benefit. However, looking at the application of that policy and giving it its due regard, I find that this being a residential building with a particular group of future occupants, that there's perhaps not as significant community benefit, if any at all, from incorporating public art within this development, as there would be if one were to look at other more broader community accessible buildings. Noting that this is also a charitable and funded application, I do take the applicant's point that it is perhaps stretching the budget beyond what might be reasonable. We're not dealing with a purely commercial entity here. So I believe in this situation, it is perhaps not as appropriate to apply the city's public art policy to this development application, and I would be comfortable with seeing that condition removed.
Thank you. Member Lafanti, seconded.
Yes, I support the deletion in this particular instance of public art, noting that the public art is a policy position and therefore provides a level of discretion and not to be sort of slavishly adhered to. I understand the comments provided by the city and the rationale for them. From my perspective, both the type of development, being a residential development, and the nature of the occupants and the land use itself, as well as its context, given that it has a significant mix of development, both new and old development in this area, as well as being opposite or very close to, not directly opposite, the parkland waterfront area. From my perspective, I think it is appropriate in this context that we can waive condition or provision for public art.
Thank you very much. Does any other member wish to speak for or against this amendment? Councillor Kunza.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I support the amendment. Whilst I recognise the reasons why the city has the public art policy, I think the amount of work that's gone through the design review panel, I'm sure it's aesthetically and pleasing building, and the amenity will be fantastic. I don't think, as mentioned by the prior speaker, given its proximity to the Canning River Regional Park, I think the majority of the focus will be on the regional park in terms of amenity. This is on the fringe of the actual Canning City Centre, and I don't think public art is necessarily going to add anything given the amenity provided by the natural environment, and also with the argument put forward by the applicant with respect to every dollar needing to be used for the charitable purpose, and their focus on raising grant funding in the advocacy work and also raising in donations to put forward to this important cause. I agree that we don't need to be investing additional funds into the public art concept, and so I support the deletion of this condition.
Thank you, councillor. Anyone else wish to speak for or against? Mayor Hall.
Just very quickly, Chair, just to say I concur with the comments from Councillor Kunzer and the other panel members. Thank you. I also agree. Policy, unfortunately, sometimes becomes a bit of a capture-all document. I don't think was ever the intention of the City of Canning's council, Councillor Kunzer, myself, or other councillors, to put a financial imposition on charitable groups for the building of charitable assets for a charitable purpose. I don't think that was ever the intention to put an imposition, place an imposition on developers of assets for that purpose. So I might talk to Councillor Kunzer. It might be worth reviewing the policy and just having a look at how we ensure that a sensible approach is taken. But I agree that it would be worth deleting it. I support it.
Thank you, Mayor Hall. I have nothing further to add. I think there's been a lot of contribution towards this amendment. So let's put this amendment to the vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you. I note that you had some other things that you wish to amend. I'll leave those to you, presiding member. Would you like me to deal with those at this point?
Whatever you prefer.
All right. Shall I continue then?
You can keep going.
I would like to propose a further amending motion, therefore, to delete condition 1, which refers to the MRS.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for that amendment? Thank you, Member Lafanti.
I don't know that I need to say much other than that is now the protocol, given the changes to the Metropolitan Region scheme. There no longer needs to be a reference within matters considered by local government unless there are specific matters that relate to the MRS that need to be included, and that is not the case in this instance.
Thank you. Anything you wish to add as seconder?
No.
No? All right. Any other member wish to speak for or against? No. All those in favour? Carried unanimously.
Thank you. Further amending motion to, I think this brings us to amending motion 5 to condition 4, which is to delete the words. Now let me see. It must be granted and registered with Landgate, I think. I think that's what we need to delete.
I think we were talking, the question I asked was about requiring the deed of easement to be prepared to the city's satisfaction rather than the solicitor's.
To the city satisfaction. I'm happy to delete apostrophe S and solicitors therefore from condition 4.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for that amendment? Thank you, Member Lafanti. Wish to speak further to that?
I just would echo your point in question time that we wouldn't include third party or external party approvals as part of a condition. This makes the city responsible for seeing that through with their external advisors, etc.
Thank you. Member Lafanti, do you wish to speak?
I would concur that clarification of the clearing agent is a relevant change to this condition.
Thank you. Any member wish to speak for or against this amendment? No? Let's put it to a vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously.
I think I'll leave it there. Thank you very much. That's all I need to say.
Thank you very much. Do you wish to speak further to the primary motion?
No, I'm comfortable with what I've said already. Thank you.
Right. Member Lafanti has seconded the primary motion. Would you like to speak?
Thank you. I support this proposal. Thank you to the applicant for the additional material and the material that we've provided in the documents, and thank you to the officers for the extensive report and all the details in there. From my perspective, the proposal is an appropriate land use on this site in this location. It is got good accessibility in and around both its direct location as well as to things like Albany Highway and the surrounding commercial area, providing great access to a range of services and other facilities for occupants of this development. So I think the locational context of the site is very good. It also provides a good location and proximity to a recreational facility, particularly in relation to the adjoining reserve, and I think that is also appropriate consideration in relation to this type of development and the nature of the occupants that they are providing the service for. Overall, the design is well-designed building, appropriately located on the site. I encourage and support the use of the easement to gain vehicle access, great use of the overall site, giving both rear access as well as front access for servicing and visitors, and nice secure access for those requiring on-site parking. The inclusion of the landscaped area internally, both with its covered landscaping and open landscaping, is a great amenity to the site. And overall, as I said, both form and design are appropriate in the site context.
Thank you very much. Mayor Hall, do you wish to speak to the primary motion?
Thank you for the opportunity. Yes, I support the primary motion. Thank you. I did have an amendment I'd like to put as well, if that was possible.
Certainly. What is your amendment?
The amendment would be to delete condition 10, and I'd like to speak to that if I can get a seconder.
That's fine. Anyone wish to speak? Anyone wish to second that amendment?
I'm just moving up the thing to find it.
Thank you, Councillor Kunza.
I will second it to enable the conversation to occur.
Thank you, Councillor Kunza, already seconded.
Oh, sorry.
All good. Over to you, Mayor Hall. Do you wish to speak to your amendment?
Yes, thank you. Look, I'm fully supportive. I'm a cyclist myself. I'm fully supportive of all the work the city does in relation to our extensive walking and cycling network. But I really think the City of Canning has proved itself to be, very pragmatic and sensible in the way it approaches these development applications. And I think it's incumbent on all of us as a panel to judge these on their merits, but also individually. And I'm not certain that for short-term accommodation for homeless people, many of whom we heard this morning from the applicant suffer significant mental health issues, including PTSD, that it really is a requirement for us to impose on them 20 bicycle bays. And I know that has been reduced after some negotiation down to 12, but we heard from the applicant this morning they think it's totally unnecessary. I tend to agree. And if the applicant before us was building private residences for people with dementia or palliative care units or whatever it might be, I wonder whether we would be here talking about this in exactly the same context. So I just think we have to take a really sensible approach to this. I know there's a requirement. I hope there's a discretion. But for this particular applicant and for this particular build and for the purpose that it has been built for, I just think it's an imposition. I'd rather see the cost from these 20 bicycle bays put into the built form or into landscaping or into something far more meaningful for the residents rather than just a arbitrary requirement for them to build bicycling infrastructure that I feel certain will not ever be used or required.
Thank you, Mayor Hall. Councillor Kunza, as seconder to the amendment, would you like to speak to it?
Yes, I would concur with Mayor Hall and agree with the applicant. The intended use of the site, I don't see why we'd need to provide that sort of infrastructure. I'm comfortable that there will be capacity for people, if they were to have a bicycle, to secure it appropriately. But as the applicant mentioned, that's not likely. And whilst there's a phenomenal cycling path adjacent to the lot, I don't see why the applicant should be requested to invest into bicycle infrastructure that they don't actually believe will be utilised.
Thank you. Does any other member wish to speak for or against this amendment? Councillor Member Laflatte.
Thank you. I am supportive of this condition. I acknowledge the city officers and the rationale they provided in relation to bicycle parking. I also am clear on the material and information provided by the applicant. And I would also make specific comments in relation to the site's locational context. This is an excellent location in terms of both services, facilities, public transport and recreation, providing significant opportunities for accessibility within and around the site that would not necessarily be compromised for removing bicycle parking on this particular site, in this particular location of this particular land use.
Thank you very much. Unless anyone else wishes to speak to this amendment, let's put it to the vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Back to you, Mayor Hall. Do you wish to speak any further to the primary motion?
No, I don't. I'm supportive of it. Thank you. Nothing further to add.
Right. Thank you very much. Anyone else wish to speak to the primary motion? Councillor Kunzler?
Thank you, Chair. Look, I speak in favour of the recommendation as amended. I commend Rafa in initiating this project and choosing Cannington, as has been previously mentioned. I think the location is a phenomenal location for this sort of purpose, adjacent to, we call it the Jewel and the Crown, the Canning River Regional Park, and it's actually a hidden gem, and the fact that it's near the Greenfield Bridge enables residents to be able to go out and get exercise in what is a tranquil environment and take a number of great routes, and its proximity to Carousel enables a local shopping centre that you don't need to travel far towards. So I think the location is perfect, and congratulate Rafa on investing into this project, and thank council officers for their time in assessing it.
Thank you very much. Okay, before I speak to the primary motion, I'd like to move a couple of very minor amendments. I'd like to amend condition 11 relating to removal of redundant crossovers and reinstatement of the verge to add the wording prior to occupation of development at the beginning of the condition. Do I have a seconder for that amendment? Thank you, Member Hyde. The reason for this is very simple. It just makes it clear when the required actions need to occur. Do you wish to speak a seconder?
No, thank you.
Does anyone else wish to speak for or against this amendment? No? Let's put it to the vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Last amendment is to amend condition 20, which relates to the schedule of colours and materials, to add the words to the satisfaction of the city at the end of the condition. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Member Hyde. The reason for this is simple. It just makes it clear that the action needs to be undertaken to the satisfaction of the City of Canning to avoid any uncertainty or debate about that at clearance stage. Anything else to add? No. If no other member wants to talk to that amendment, let's put it to a vote. All those in favour? Thank you. Carried unanimously. I'll speak very briefly to the primary motion. I agree that this is a much needed service in our community, not just in Canning, everywhere. So well done to Canning for working with this applicant. It's well located and of an appropriate density and scale for its context within the Canning Activity Centre. I note the proposal's been before the design review panel on 3 occasions, and that most issues raised by the panel have been addressed, resulting in a building with a very high quality design. The issues that were not responded to through changes in design have been addressed appropriately in the report. It is a pity that the large tree on the adjoining lot will be impacted by the development, but I acknowledge that retention of this single tree will render both the subject and the neighbouring site almost undevelopable, so I sadly understand why it needs to go, but I note that planting will occur to compensate for loss of tree canopy on this site and hopefully the adjoining site. That's pretty much all I have to say, so I will hand back to Member Hyde as mover. Do you wish to close?
Thank you. Thank you for everybody who has spoken for this. I'm very comfortable with the amendments that we've made. I think we've approached this with a view to reasonableness and encouragement to get this very important development up and running. So I wish it every success and thank the City of Canning for promoting and supporting this development.
Thank you very much. Now that we have made a few amendments to the primary motion, let us vote on that primary motion as amended. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to item 4, Form 2 DAP applications. There are none for Canning today. And item 5, Section 31 statutory considerations, also none today. With that, I thank Mayor Hall and Councillor Funza, our local government DAP members, for your attendance and participation today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll go there and make our
And thank you. Welcome back, everybody, and thank you for those online for your patience while we change from Part B to Part C of our agenda. Moving on to Part C, the City of South Perth. Item 1, declaration of due consideration. Panel members need to have considered all of the documentation contained within Part C of the agenda and the Part C related information, noting that an R13 direction response for further information was published on the 28th of March 2025. Could I please confirm by a show of hands that members have considered all information? Thank you. Item 2, disclosures of interest. No disclosures have been received to this point. Do any members wish to make any declarations of interest in relation to this item? No. Thank you. Thank you. Moving then on to item 3, Form 1 DAP applications. Item 3.1, Lot 2, 112 and 113, number 42 to 46, Leonora Street, Como, proposed 56 multiple dwellings, DAP number 24/02819. We have 5 presenters on this item today. I will just flag that we did have 6 presenters who requested to speak, but Jeffrey Schumacher, a local resident speaking for the recommendation in the report, is unwell and therefore has provided this panel with a written copy of the words that he was going to use during his deputation. For the record, Mr. Schumacher, we have read your submission, both your original and the additional information that was provided. So thank you for giving us that. The other presenters on this item today, Peter Merger from Urbanista Town Planning, speaking for the recommendation in the report. John Cheeseborough from Hub Property Group speaking against the recommendation in the report. Max Waters from Embrace Architects speaking against the recommendation in the report. George Ashton, Element, speaking against the recommendation in the report. And Daniel Lees from Element speaking against the recommendation in the report. All presenters, I remind you that in accordance with clause 482 of the DAP Standing Orders 2024, presentations are limited to 3 minutes. We've read all the written documentation you've provided us, so I encourage you to focus on the key points you'd like to get across within the designated 3-minute time frame. Panel members will be able to ask you questions afterwards. Just from Daniela. Right.
Peter is also unwell, so
right, it seems to be going around. Well, we've got Daniela for a couple of items today, so that's good. Daniela, over to you. Your 3 minutes starts now.
Thank you. Good morning, presiding member and panel members. Daniela Merger from Urbanista Town Planning. I'm here today on behalf of Miss Christina Browning, the owner of the adjoining, or one of the apartments of the adjoining property at number 8 Henley Street in Como. The application seeks approval for a 12-storey development, 6 stories above the base height allowed under the Canning Bridge Activity Centre plan. While height is certainly an issue here, it's important to recognise that this proposal reflects a much deeper problem. At its core, this is a fundamental site planning issue. The basic design and siting of the development completely disregards our client's property and amenity. The building mass is concentrated towards the rear of the site, with absolutely no articulation on the facade fronting the laneway, resulting in an almost complete obstruction of views to the river and impacting access to light, ventilation and privacy. A key principle of the planning framework is that development must respond to the context of the area. The recently constructed apartments at number 8 Henley Street reflects the desired and future character and quality the city is seeking to encourage in this precinct. The proposed development demonstrates no consideration for how it interfaces with the adjoining residential apartments, and therefore no consideration for the desired and future character of the area. In our submission to the city, we put forward reasonable and practical alternatives. One is to increase the central view corridor by repositioning the towers, or to redistribute bulk and height between the towers to reduce the impact on the neighbouring properties. Both options can achieve a better design outcome without sacrificing the development potential. In addition, the proposal raises serious concerns, traffic concerns. The development adds 52 extra apartments above the permitted yield, translating into a significant increase in vehicle movements through the laneway. All of this additional traffic will rely on a narrow rear laneway for access, yet no widening of the laneway has been included on the plans. It simply cannot accommodate this level of intensification without creating congestion, safety issues and conflicts between vehicles, pedestrians and cyclists. There are also privacy concerns with just a 10-metre setback between the proposed development and our clients' balconies, well below the 12-metre minimum required under the planning framework. Screening, landscaping and greater setbacks must be incorporated to reduce overlooking and maintain reasonable levels of privacy. To be clear, we are not opposed to development of this site, and we are not suggesting that the development should be redesigned to completely comply with provisions of the activity centre plan. Quite the opposite. We support quality, well-considered development that fits in with the context and respects its neighbours, regardless of the compliance with the development provisions.
You're at time, Daniela, so I'll ask you to wrap up.
This proposal in its current form does not do that. We therefore urge the panel to consider our submissions and request the applicant provide meaningful changes to the design to achieve a more balanced and respectful built form outcome. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Stay there for this minute, just in case there are any questions of this presenter.
Thank you.
Not for me, structure.
I have a couple. So one of your suggestions for improvement is that the building should be pushed away from the rear neighbours and towards the front of the site. Would this reduced setback not result in non-compliance then with the setback provisions of the activity centre plan?
As I understand it, the front setback on Leonora Street is actually compliant, and it's put the development sits further back from what the setback should be. But not only that, with the development sitting right towards the rear of the site, as you can see from some of the Henley Street elevations that is provided in the plans, that site slopes quite a lot. So the development is pushed to the rear to, I guess, capitalise on the higher portion of the site, and is therefore quite open on Leonora Street, which looks great from Leonora Street, but then results in impacts to the rear. So I think if the proposal is trying to, or is seeking additional stories, so if that's the case, push it forward and place the bulk in the lower portions of the site to then allow that sort of openness and reduce that impact of overlooking, views of significance for the rear properties. So I think, you know, the applicant, if it's been designed to benefit them in every way, but without any consideration of the neighbouring property, and the neighbouring property is the desired in the future context. All the other properties around it are generally single houses that sort of exist from previous planning frameworks. And I think if the design should consider any development, it should be the property at number 8 Henley Street, because that is the desired and future context.
Thank you. So just to follow up then, how would your clients' views have been impacted if the proposal was for an 8-storey single tower compliant development?
In the agenda, there's, I think, tab 8, I think it is. Sorry, 6, there's view impact diagrams that the applicant provided, which is very helpful. If we go to, so it's page 129 of the agenda, and I think there's about 3 or 4 pages. The proposal, so the image on the left-hand side, so the top left, illustrates the approved development, because I understand this has already been approved, and you can sort of see how the rooftop balcony that exists in the client's property, you're able to sort of maintain views over the top of the development. And then the image on the right is the proposal in its current state, and you can sort of see how it sits right in front of their balconies and just sort of impacts on those views to the river. So can
I just check with you, because the views that I see in those images are views of not necessarily the river, but it's more sort of the sky. And your particular client, I'm not asking you to divulge exactly where your client lives, but given you're representing that client, if that development had been built or a comparable one, would that have affected your client's views to the same extent?
Okay, so probably 130 is the best example of, maybe 131, page 131, because that is a view diagram from sort of, I guess, the centre of number 8 Henley Street. You can see how, with the first image, how if the building was constructed at a height that was compliant, you would be able to see over the top of the building and sort of get those views to the river in front of the building, whereas the proposal on the right, image number 2, illustrates that that area is completely blocked. And yes, the image does represent some sort of glimpses of the city. So that's not in contest, but although the view diagram is provided from the centre of the site and the balconies that exist on number 8 Henley Street are on the right-hand side. So if you zoom right in, you can see that the viewpoint is from that part of the building that sort of sticks out, but the balconies are actually on the left-hand side. So perhaps that, if you took the viewpoint from there, you'll lose the views to the city as well. So I think, and you know, like we're not necessarily suggesting that the height in isolation is an issue. It's this site planning more broadly. You know, perhaps it could be brought forward, or you know, designed in such a way to make it thinner, or allow greater view corridors, or some articulation to the rear. So again, it's just, just that, how it could be designed to reduce the impacts to the rear. I think there's definitely more opportunities there.
Thank you. Yeah. Thanks, Danielle. All right, our next presenter, pardon me, is John Cheeseborough from Hub Property Group. Do we have John with us? Over to you.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, panel members. My name is John Cheeseborough, and I'm speaking on behalf of the applicant for 42 to 46 Norris Street in Como. This project has been over 6 years in the making. Initially approved in 2020 as 2 100-storey towers with 111 apartments. It launched in early 2021 and quickly achieved strong pre-sale sales, even in the midst of the disruption of COVID. However, as you're aware, construction costs have surged beyond expectations since then, rendering the original design financially and now unviable. To make this project feasible and ensure the cost still proceeds, we've had the responsibility to optimise the site's yield. We're grateful for the city's collaboration approach in achieving that. The revised design increases the towers, introduces studio apartments, and moderately reduces the average apartment sizes. This allowed the overall scale to grow by roughly 1/3 without compromising amenity or design integrity. Crucially, this new design responds to the state's priorities around urban infill, housing, affordability, and sustainability. It delivers 156 high-quality dwellings in a well-serviced transit-oriented location, all while complying with the Canning Bridge activity centre planning almost every aspect. We've worked closely with DRP across several iterations. The latest review expressed some form of support, knowing that the updated architectural and public realm outcomes are superior to the 2020 approved version. 2 areas to work through: the visitor and motorcycle parking and the waste transfer methodology. We did explore additional basement level, but due to the water high table and prohibitive costs, it's not viable. That said, the site is extremely well connected with train, bus and bike infrastructure, and rideshare usage has increased significantly since parking guidelines were first adopted. On waste, our method is used successfully in other developments. Bin transfers will be centrally managed by cleaning staff, will have dedicated protocols to maintain hygiene and amenity in all shared areas. Additional lists would still need to have the same protocols if the current lists are used within the same format. We believe this offers a practical, proven solution aligns with the residents' expectations on who we would go to market with, and also the feedback from the previous buyers who also purchased. With the view of these, both matters are manageable and not grounds for refusal. In closing, this proposal will enhance the precinct, address a real housing need, and deliver high quality, well-integrated development with the architectural merit, smart planning, outcomes, and carefully considered and correct landscaping. We're confident that the feasibility now stacks up. We've had support from builders, and we have strong, feedback from buyers that they're willing to purchase, and we do believe that this would be a viable project to proceed, subject to the approval. Thank you.
Thank you. Panel members, any questions of John?
Thank you, Presiding Member. Karen Hyde speaking. And John, sorry if this is not for you, but you wanted to defer to somebody in your team, but your plans show staging, particularly within the parking area. And one of the aspects that the city has drawn attention to is perceived shortfall of parking, etc. How does the staging and the provision of parking work together to ensure that there is adequate supply for the occupants during the staged development?
Yeah, we explored this, and I think the guys might touch on it a little bit more as well for you. I guess the real aspect for us is really trying to make this stack up financially. We've had to potentially stage the car park, and we've done this on a number of developments in Perth at the moment currently. The way we try to do that is whatever is sold from one of the towers, the basement would allow for additional car park plus visit bays. The second stage we would look at from a structural perspective to see whether that's again viable to proceed. We're not opposed to finding other solutions or coming to an outcome that we could condition to work with that, but at the moment we're really just looking at this and saying if we could actually develop this one part and then potentially have to stage the development or stage the basement, it allows us from a financial perspective the best case to actually get this out of the ground.
Might be also for your architect to explain how you stage a basement with 2 towers.
I'll comment further on that if I could, Karen. Yeah, certainly acknowledge the need to ensure that both visitor and apartment bays are provided in a proportionate manner should the staging happen that way rather than being built out. So through easements and like, we feel that done. The potential for staging has been considered from a very really from day one of this project, given the size of it. So certainly not an afterthought, and the architect has given consideration as to where the staging line would be and how we would ensure that the car park works both for stage 1 and for stage 2, and then there's an appropriate supply of both visitor and resident bays for both stages, or in the eventuality that stage 1 proceeds and at some time until stage 2 goes.
Thank you. Any other questions of John?
I have a couple of questions. My first question is a follow-up question. You've talked in the context of staging in relation to the functionality of the car parking. Can you talk about staging in relation to the overall amenity or functionality of the design as it orientates to the streetscapes of both streets and the impact thereof in relation to the proposal we have in front of us, which shows obviously streetscape of both buildings at all levels?
If stage 1 proceed in the interim period between stage 1 proceeding, whilst we wait for stage 2 to proceed, essentially appear as a single tower building with an interface to the street, and I'm sure landscaping would be the appropriate means to finish the stage 2 of the site until such time as the stage 2 build proceeds.
And can you clarify on plans I have before me that in relation to stage 1, Leonora Street, entrance with its walkway, its residential lounge and its entrance blocks, are they part of stage 1?
Yes, they are. Yeah, so
the ground level.
The ground level amenity space and the one up on level 1 both get delivered as part of the stage 1.
Thank you. My second question is more a generic one. Anyone can answer that. In your presentation that you've provided to us, as well as the presentation you've given to us, you've talked about the economics and the project's feasibility. As you're probably aware, from a planning perspective, economics is not a land use planning matter. Can you clarify the relevance of that for us and what we should be taking away from your presentation on that aspect as part of this consideration? Anyone of you can speak to that.
Yeah, I mean, I can understand that. But also from, I guess, the applicant's perspective and point of view, it's very difficult for the majority of the projects that have achieved planning approval within this area, and seen a lot of them haven't actually been able to proceed to provide housing over the past few years. I've been a part of that as a consultant for a number of developers in that location, and as of recently again, there's one being sold on the market because it couldn't move to the next stage. Where we've tried to provide the solution here in respect to the planning is a proposal that we think would work with the density and height and the yield, and also the product mix to the area. De-risking it from a staging perspective would also help to de-risk that further, and essentially collaboratively with the city and other members to really put this in the best viable perspective that this would go ahead. We've done this previously, and we're confident that it could work. I'm not sure that answers your question fully.
I'll probably just add.
Yes, you can add. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, readily acknowledge the relevance or lack of matters to be considered under the planning application through this pathway. I guess it's just a little bit more context, perhaps answering the question of why, particularly in the context of the existing approval that sits on this property. It's the context.
Thank you. Those are my questions.
Thank you. I've just got one question for you, John. And you touched on it briefly, but you've indicated that the proposed method of waste management in the building is in operation in another development in Nedlands. I'm keen to understand whether that was a development you were involved in and whether there is still involvement in that development. And if so, have there been any issues or feedback identified by residents of that development in terms of the impact on amenity of that methodology of getting waste up and down in the lifts, storing it on the different floors?
I wasn't a part of that project. Yeah, it was obviously the feedback and how they propose it with strata management and how, from an operational perspective and also from hygiene, currently works. The demographic and the proposal, yes, it was probably small in the amount of apartments that were currently there, but that apartment in Nedlands and other various apartments that we've worked with from our basis has not had any negative impact to the residents. We have done a survey previously with some of the residents who gave us feedback to say that they would support this and wouldn't see an issue.
Okay, thank you. Let's move on to the next presenter, Max Waters from Embrace Architects, speaking against the recommendation in the report.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, panel members, for the opportunity to speak today. We've been the project architect on this development for 5 years, and we're very excited to have the opportunity to take the project forward again with this new application. Early engagement with the DRP was a vital first step for us in testing the merits of the design, and we believe that collaboration through the DRP process gave us confidence that our ultimate DA application was, built on a good foundation. And that we would ultimately arrive at a design of high quality and value to the site. So keeping the 2-tower configuration enabled us to tackle some of the urban design challenges. We're able to break down the visual bulk, provide separation distance between apartments within the development, create greater opportunities for natural ventilation and dual aspect apartments. And when viewed in context of the surrounding neighbours, in our view and in the view of the city, through the RAR, ensured key view corridors to the Swan River were maintained from the adjacent properties at 8 Henley Street, 89 Roberts Street and 91 Roberts Street when compared to the 2020 approval. One of the critical design outcomes as a result of the DRP engagement and then work with the city was the exemplary ground plane activation. So the RAR makes specific mention of this on the ground floor to the central plaza facing Leonora Street. But it was actually during the DRP process that a similar outcome to the Henley Street frontage was achieved, which results in a secondary outdoor communal space co-located with indoor communal amenity spaces, which flanks the level 1 car park, and that's complemented by low-level canopy landscaping. We also believe the early engagement with the DRP in the city resulted in, a collaborative approach to both high-level urban design challenges and the more finer design detailing decisions has resulted in a development of high quality. We generally think the city's RAR was largely positive and following of the design decisions we made in response to the Canning Bridge Activity Centre Plan and the R Code's requirements. And we think that, that's evidence that it's a highly thought out design, a collaborative process and one that's really worthy of approval. So I think ultimately we thank the design assessment panel for its consideration and respectfully seek approval for the development. Thank you.
Thank you, Max. Any panel members have questions of Max?
Thank you, Presiding Member. Karen Hyde speaking. Max, and members of the community have put forward a number of suggestions about modification to the proposal, particularly to do with site planning. Some have suggested that the development move closer to the front setback. Others have suggested that the towers are separated across a wider distance. I'm sure you've looked at those comments, and could you please provide some information as to how those scenarios may or may not be practical or may impact the outcomes that you've tried to achieve here, please?
Yeah, so my understanding is that a lot of those concerns were derived from the both overlooking or the view corridor issues on those neighbouring sites. And so discussion of moving the towers in some ways will just move the problem somewhere else. It may impact positively on residents like 8 Henley Street, but then negatively on residents at potential future developments at the adjacent Robert Street addresses. Speaking before, or listening before, sorry, about the setbacks to Leonora Street, we are very close. We're basically at 4 metres to Leonora Street, and we do have greater setbacks to the building line on the upper levels. That would be levels 5 and above, facing Leonora Street. But these additional setbacks form the basis of the balcony, the large balconies, which do actually help reduce the visual bulk. So we can't really pick the building up and move it any closer to Henley Street. Any increase in setbacks to that laneway would result in a reduction of the building footprint. A reduction in building footprint, again, we may end up being further away from those adjacent neighbours. The visual overlooking is already where the arc roads. We would only be going greater than what is already confinement, and the view corridors again may not be impacted if we were just to move the building towards Leonora Street. And then again, if we were just to reduce the overall footprint on those upper levels across the entire development, speaking to John's point, the economics may not stack up. So I think really, we were interested in the city's response, and they seem to be generally, both the city and the DRP were both generally comfortable with the setbacks to the rear. And so we thought it was appropriate to maintain them as they were, which are the same setbacks as the original approval in 2020.
Thank you. Thank you for that. No further questions from me.
No questions from me.
Max, I just have a question for you. So your planning consultant in their submission acknowledges that the staff could condition the requirement for additional motorcycle scooter bays and additional visitor bays, and that this would not materially affect the development. Could you just explain to us what changes you would need to make to accommodate those conditions?
So with respect to motorbike parking, we would basically need to lose 1 or 2 rear tandem bays on ground floor, or make some minor adjustments to the extent of the level 1 car park to fit in those last couple of motorcycle parks. That can be done without too much hassle. We do have scope within our level 1 footprint to review the overall parking and motorbike allocation. And then the second point with respect to, was it visitor parking or waste? Sorry.
It's visitor parking.
Yeah, so visitor parking, again, we can't invent any more car spaces. There's just simply nowhere else to put them. Even stackers aren't a consideration given the water table. What we would need to do is reallocate some of the single parking bays which are currently allocated to 1 and 2 bedroom apartments to visitor parking. If we were to do that to meet the minimum requirements of the visitor parking, we'd be taking them away from residents. Now that would just be a decision that would ultimately, come down to what the panel thought was best. The city's response, the RAR made mention that, we are already below the requirements for 1 bedroom apartments, but they were willing to accept them. If we were to grab more single car bays away from 1 bed apartments to give to visitors, I'm not sure if the position of support would be maintained, but it is an option that we have available.
Thank you for that.
Sorry, if I could just one more thing. Do you need me to speak to any of the staging questions? Because I've had if need be.
Does any other member need any additional information on staging from Max?
Just the practicality of it, Max, if you would please, to help us understand how you construct 2 towers and basement in stages.
Yeah, I think so. You can construct the basement in 2 stages. Basically, the wall or the point at which the stage 1 finishes is about 25 metres away from the boundary at Henley Street. So bulk excavation can occur to build a what would be a temporary wall, but it would be designed to be structurally sound in supporting the stage 1 development in and of itself. And so there would be a concrete wall that's constructed along the line of that under the staging. And that could be done using bulk excavation. We wouldn't need to use a concrete pile wall. And then that engineering would be an engineering solution in addition to an architectural solution. I would have to defer to structural engineer to the specific.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Max. Moving on, George Ashton from Element, speaking against the recommendation in the report. Over to you, George, for 3 minutes to answer.
Right. Thank you for the opportunity to present today. I'd also like to thank the city's officers. They're helping progressing the project to this point. We obviously would have appreciated a recommendation for approval. The development is still a product of really responsive engagement with the city, resulting in a built form massing response just supported by the city and their design review panel. The project will capitalise on the excellent location of the site in close proximity to major public transport infrastructure, providing residential infill that will support and increase public transport use. We'll also greatly increase the density and diversity of housing within the Canning Bridge area, with over half of the proposed dwellings delivered single bedroom or studio layouts that will offer affordable living options in a really high amenity area. The development will build upon the influx of other new development in the area, which includes a number of existing and approved developments of 8 to 9 stories in height. We think the height of the development sits comfortably within that emerging built form character and is of an appropriate scale for what is a large consolidated corner site in an activity centre location. We think it's also reflective of the maturing approach to building height and density in activity centre locations and the need for the development industry to adapt to changing market conditions to meet current housing demand. The bulk and scale is effectively mitigated through the 2-tower design, an appropriate setback response, and really extensive deep soil landscaping in setback zones to ensure that it integrates appropriately with surrounding streets and lower density residences in the area. It also responds to the significant change in levels across the site. The ground floor is set into the site topography, and an exemplary ground plane outcome as ratified by the DRP has been achieved on what is a challenging site with significant changes in street interface levels. We think the development therefore represents an appropriate outcome for the site that will support the objectives of the Canning Bridge Activity Centre plan, particularly to improve land efficiency, housing variety and affordability, and to support the range of facilities that are planned to be delivered within that precinct. The development also aligns with the city's local planning strategy, which recognises the need for higher residential densities within the city's activity centres to accommodate a growing population in accordance with prevailing state government policy direction. We would therefore respectfully request the approval of this application subject to the conditions set out in the city's alternative recommendation, which we are satisfied with. Thank you.
Thank you, George. Panel members, any questions of George?
None from me.
No, I did have some questions on the conditions, but I think Dan, you're going to speak to those. Yes, so no questions at this point. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. With that, over to you, Daniel Lees.
Thank you, and good morning, panel members. Thank you for the opportunity to speak in support of the approval of this apartment building and provide a meaningful contribution towards housing supply and the achievement of the Canning Bridge Activity Centre Plan objectives. We read the overarching tone of the city's report to be positive, with the two reasons for refusal being specific to waste and visitor car parking, which are both capable of being addressed. We do not believe that a 9-bay shortfall of visitor car parking warrants the refusal of this entire proposal. In the immediate surrounds of the site, visitor parking already exists on street on Leonora Street, with space for 6 cars immediately adjacent to the site. Along Henley Street, space exists for an additional 5 or so bays, which would continue the existing in-bay parking arrangement that exists adjacent to the Paradiso building. This alone represents a supply of 11 additional bays in the public realm, where we believe visitor bays are best located. The driver of this provision is, of course, the residential bays for apartment occupants, which we say seeks to meet contemporary market demand. We would say that 184 car bays for 156 apartments is not unreasonable and is not an oversupply. We believe this project warrants approval based on the plans that are presented to you as per the alternate recommendation for approval. As mentioned by George, we are comfortable with the alternate recommendation for approval. However, should the motorcycle and visitor bay issue be critical to the panel in terms of being a threshold issue for approval or refusal, then internal efficiencies within the car park and a reallocation of bays could be achieved via a condition without materially altering an approval, as has been mentioned by the panel and has been confirmed by our architect, Max. With due respect to the prior speaker, who has objected from and on behalf of the Eastern Paradiso building, we note that building height, form, scale and setbacks have been well considered by the city and its design review panel and supported as noted in the report. The view corridor diagrams of attachment 6 of the RAR demonstrate that there will be minimal impact to views of significance from the Paradiso building due to the additional height specifically, as compared with the current development approval on the site. The impact being less sky view available, whilst still maintaining broad river vistas from the Paradiso building. It is also noted that reduced sky view would only impact the uppermost levels of the Paradiso building, with the proposal maintaining the same building width as the current development approval. The activity centre plan clearly contemplates buildings of this scale and form, and it is inherent that views cannot be maintained by all apartment buildings in perpetuity in a development area such as this.
You're at time, Daniel.
Thank you. Just in closing, as I mentioned initially, it's clear from the RAR that there's a positive tone here, and we've worked very closely with the city and the panel. We will respectfully request your approval today in accordance with the city's alternate recommendation.
Thank you. Panel members, any questions on Dan Lees?
No.
Just one from me. Thank you. Dan, you alluded to the fact that the panel thought that stipulating visitor parking bays and motorcycle bays was important, that could be incorporated into conditions of approval. Did you have a view on, and I will address the city on this too shortly, did you have a view on how that might be incorporated?
The mechanics of how that might be incorporated?
Yes, did you have a particular condition in mind? If not, that's okay.
Look,
I'll address the city in the same way.
There is a condition that talks to the requirement of car parking and a car parking management plan.
Yeah.
I'd suggest that the wording of that condition could be tweaked so as to specify the desired number of visitor and motorcycle bays.
Okay. Well, I'll ask the city as well, but thank you for that. That was all.
Thank you to the presenters. I'm going to now move to the local government officers. So you may take a seat. Want that. I believe we have Courtney Wynn and Fiona Mullen with us today from the City of South Perth. Hi, and welcome to you both. Do any panel members, I have a few, but do any panel members have questions of the city?
Yes, I have a question to the city. Thank you very much for the report, very good and extensive report from my perspective. I have questions that relate to two matters, building height and significant views. And my questions tie back to Canning Bridge Activity Centre plan. In your report, it's page 5 of your report, under the heading of building height element 3, you make specific comment of clauses within the Canning Bridge Activity Centre. And you also make a comment clearly in your report on page 6 that with respect to, and I'll read what you've said here, that with respect to the variation to prescribed building height is supported, and you've cited the reasons for that. You've also made similar comments in relation to views, and in your commentary around views you have referred back to the previous approval and the impact of significant views. Today's meeting, and we received in the documentation and the presentation material, there are comments provided that, particularly in relation to height is inconsistent with the Canning Bridge Activity Centre plan. I'd like you to comment further, given you've made comment already in your report, but can you speak specifically that the concern that it's inconsistent with the Activity Centre plan?
Sure. So the intent of the Activity Centre plan is to have the highest buildings closest to Canning Bridge, and as it moves away, they are supposed to get smaller. This particular site is located in an area where it has 6 to 8 stories, depending on the lot size, and there is no minimum height. So what basically will happen is that there could be buildings of all different heights in the same location right next to each other. It will not achieve a uniform building height outcome. So the city's taken the approach to look at this application on its merits, considering the context of the site's topography, its location on a corner and on a right of way, and that's how we have looked at the context.
Thank you. And the second part of that is in relation to the view corridor and the concerns that were raised. I note the material in our documentation here, particularly electronic page 129, 130, 131, which was the views or the vistas that were provided in the documentation and as referred to in the presentation today. Can you speak further to that in terms of your evaluation of impact on significant views?
So we've looked at the properties behind as they're the ones who are most affected, looking out onto the Canning River. We asked the applicant to provide the view analysis diagram based on the top 4 of the adjoining development and the likely height of the one on Robert Street that hasn't been developed yet, to see what the current view would be if the 8-storey development went ahead versus the proposal. And we were comfortable when we saw those that it was only minor impacts and there would still be access to views from those properties. And the applicant also provided a view corridor through the centre of the development, which is not actually required if they did just do an 8-storey development. It could actually cover the whole site. So by breaking into 2 towers, they've provided additional access to views that wouldn't otherwise be provided.
Thank you. Can I continue with my question? My third question is in relation to grounds for refusal. Particularly interested in relation to the concerns of oversupply of resident parking and visitor parking. And I'd be interested in some further material from you or some further comments from you, particularly in the context of impact of visitor parking and or ability for parking in the local network. I can't recall when I was on site if there is timed parking. There's not timed parking, so there's indented areas along those streets parking for the general public, but they're not timed or controlled parking as such. Yeah, that's right. Okay. So my question goes to really, I suppose, the significance of the concern about visitor parking when predominantly on-site parking for people who will be in the occupants of the building on a regular basis being housed within the building. So I'm interested in hearing your concerns about why visitor parking in this particular location of this site and within the context of this development is so big, such a significant concern for you to warrant a reasonable refusal.
Yeah, so I guess the city's taken the view that we can support reduced parking for residents. They know what they're buying into essentially, and they will plan, not to have a vehicle. Our concern is in relation to visitors from outside of the area coming to this site with an expectation that they are able to park in close proximity to the development. At the moment, there is no timed or parking restrictions on the street, but as this area is going to be developing into more high density development, the demand for on-street parking will likely mean that there's very little on-street parking availability. And further to that, the city also, city traffic engineers have indicated that they may need to make one side of each street a no parking zone to ensure that there is enough room for two vehicles to pass plus a parked car. The city also last year amended its policy to prevent in-bayed parking from being constructed in verges in Canning Bridge because it's been resulting in unnecessary removal of street trees, additional hard stand, and it's not something that the city is supportive of.
Thank you. Those were my questions.
Thank you. I have a few and slight variations on questions that have been asked. So just in terms of height, there's a section on page 5 of your RA that states that development of any site for the purposes of a building which is greater in height than 32 metres shall only be permitted where the land is greater than 1,800 square metres. Is this a provision of the activity centre plan that applies to this development or your scheme?
It applies to the Canning Bridge Activity Centre.
Okay, so the requirement for 6 to 8 stories and maximum height of 26 metres is therefore not absolute, is it?
Oh no.
Okay, so yeah, so the 6 to 8 stories and 26 metres is mentioned as maximum height. Yet on a site greater than 1,800, you can go higher than 32. Is what I'm reading. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Moving on to parking. So if the DAP were to condition the requirement for the extra motorcycle, scooter and visitor bays, would this adequately address your first reason for refusal?
We would be comfortable with the condition for the 4 motorcycle bays. We believe that can be achieved with the removal of only 1 car bay. The city does have concerns with conditioning the visitor parking and if they're going to take it from residential bays, it hasn't been considered by us in terms of the parking shortfall.
Okay. So waste management arrangements, if we were to diminish the reason for refusal about parking, that would really leave only the current waste management arrangements as your main concern. Would these arrangements realistically be enough reason to refuse a development like this one? I guess what I'm asking is, if these waste management arrangements internal to the building were your only concern, would you still be recommending refusal?
Thank you through the chair. It may have been something that the city felt they were able to condition, but it is still an area that the city has concerns in relation to the future amenity for residents of the building.
Okay. And then just one last thing that came up through some of the submissions. One of the submissions and presentations that was made raised concerns about how the DA was consulted on. So giving you an opportunity just to address that.
Yeah, so we waited until after the excluded period around Christmas had finished, and then it commenced mid-January for a 2-week period with an additional day just to account for the long weekend of Australia Day public holiday. There was one submitter who indicated that she had been away and didn't receive a letter, and she was granted an additional week to submit her concerns, which were considered in forming the RAR.
Okay, and just to touch on a process that you used, there was some criticism about the fact that residents it wasn't explained thoroughly in the letter that went out exactly where the areas of discretion were, I think. So your standard process, does that align with many local other governments in terms of what you put in your consultation letters?
Yeah, so the consultation letter for this one, because there were so many little variations, just outlined the key variations which would likely impact surrounding residents, and that's particularly in relation to building height, parking, and those sort of matters. Okay, thank you.
I have some questions. Thank you, Presiding Member. Karen Hyde speaking. Just to pursue you a little bit further in terms of the parking and the assessment of visitor parking versus residential parking. I think what the applicant is proposing is to adjust the balance between resident parking, which in your RAR you suggest you're uncomfortable with because it is an oversupply, yet there's an undersupply in your opinion of visitor parking. So if bays, which might otherwise been available for the occupants, are marked for visitor bays, given that you were concerned with the oversupply for occupants, I'm struggling to understand how you'd therefore be uncomfortable with the reallocation for visitor bays, given that that was the reason, one of the reasons for refusal.
The oversupply of bays are tandem bays. So I understand the applicant is proposing to relocate single bays, which at the moment may be the only bay available for some of these dwellings. So there will still be an oversupply of parking because they're going to increase the number of units that have no parking bays.
So thank you for that clarity. So rather than perhaps marking visitor bays as such, what would be a process to overcome that issue? Is that through a parking management plan and through some level of signage? I mean, some occupants may not actually, whilst given tandem bays, might actually not require those two bays. So one of the tandem bays might be appropriate for visitors. I'm assuming that most visitors would have highlighted to the occupants that they're going to visit, and therefore there'd be some communication and some organisation. To overcome this issue, would this be a factor, as perhaps the applicant has suggested, which could be encapsulated in a parking management plan to the satisfaction of the city? And just, sorry, to extend that question a little further in terms of the scooter bay shortfall, which is 4 scooter bays, I think. It's a fairly small thing. Obviously they're quite small, and they presumably could fit around other parking allocation or line marking. So sorry, just to go back to the question, would a parking management plan be, if correctly worded in terms of a condition, would that be a mechanism to satisfy the city ultimately about this?
Thank you. I think if the DAP were obviously minded to approve the application, it would be through the parking management plan that we would be able to achieve the visitor parking.
Right.
I think the difficulty is with the city not being able to assess the impact on the additional the residential units that may not then benefit from a bay. This was an element that was discussed at some length with the applicants. We did try and resolve this before preparing the RAR. And I think it always came back to the point that we would have liked to have assessed if that was actually going to be a viable or feasible option, and how that would then impact on apartments that didn't then result in any parking available to them.
I understand the position that you haven't had a chance to contemplate that. It's something which has emerged as a perhaps compromise over the last 72 hours or whatever. But obviously a condition to the satisfaction of the city would actually give you that ability to continue that negotiation. Would it be, for instance, a third dot point to condition 18 of the alternate that you have provided to, or I'm seeking your input into some appropriate wording should the panel determine to go that direction?
Yes, thank you through the chair. I think that would be an appropriate mechanism to do that, and very desperately trying to think of some wording that we could add, but yes, I think that would be, yes.
Okay. Would it be something, allocation for visitor parking and motor scooter parking, something as sort of bland as that could then be a point for discussion
we need to put a minimum number of bays in that condition.
Okay, so it would be for 20 visitor parking bays and 17 scooter bays, is that correct? Okay, thank you. That I think was the only question I had.
All right, thank you, panel members. I think we've asked a lot of questions of the local government officers. I think we might then move to the report. So we are going to be dealing with the recommendation in the report for refusal of the proposal for 2 stipulated reasons. Can I seek a mover and a seconder for the recommendation in the responsible authority? No? All right, that recommendation, that motion lapses for want of a mover and seconder. We have been provided with an alternate recommendation via the Reg 13 response to the request for information. Does anybody wish to move the alternate recommendation for approval? Member Hyde, does anyone wish to second that? Thank you very much. Member Hyde, would you like to speak to that?
Thank you, presiding member. The city has prepared a very thorough and generally supportive assessment, and I thank them for the thoroughness. It was extremely helpful in considering this application. The proposal has also been reviewed by the city's expert design review panel. The findings generally, and I concur with those, is that the proposal is appropriate for the centre zone and the activity centre area. I note there were no objections from state government agencies, notwithstanding the proposal is seeking discretion in a number of areas, but the RAR has elaborated on the impact of those factors of discretion. Acknowledging that height is generally proposed for 6 to 8 stories is almost as of right, and that buildings taller than that, 32 metres or approximately 10 stories, need lots greater than 1800 metres. 10 and 11 story development as proposed here, noting that that has been calculated on the basis of basement parking as being not a story. This lot is over 3,500 square metres. So it's a considerable site to accommodate taller buildings, and perhaps therefore the height and scale of these buildings could be viewed as quite proportionate to the scale of the site. The way that the buildings and the 2 towers have been arranged does maintain access to views, albeit that they are changed. And I think it's important to understand that in an activity centre and an area of transition such as this, that views will inevitably be changed. But nonetheless, it has been demonstrated to us that there is still access to views of water and city beyond. The development as proposed, given the 2 tower arrangement, seeks to minimise the bulk and overshadowing. The setback variations and the plaza detail, which is part and parcel of that variation to setback, contribute well to the streetscape. The separation between the towers responds very much to the future character of the activity centre, which is encouraging variation, but a number of towers rather than a blanket street form of scale. Visual privacy has been assessed against the R codes as being acceptable and with minimal impact. I note also that there is a proposal to work towards 5-star Green Star equivalent, which is to be commended. The waste management techniques which are being proposed was put forward as a reason for refusal. However, in reviewing the city's policy and also those of Walga and other local governments, chute arrangements for waste is not a mandatory requirement. And in fact, I note a number of other local governments have large buildings of this nature where the waste is being collected in a very similar way to what's being proposed here, without impacting upon the amenity of the future residents. The parking, the applicant has provided a solution to meet requirements, and we're only really talking about a small number of visitor bays and a small number of scooter bays in the shortfall, but accepting that the city has some concerns with that, and it certainly has been a comment from the submissions that have been received by the community. I would like to propose, presiding member, an amendment to condition 18, which would add as a third Roman numeral the words allocation of 20 visitor parking bays and 17 motorcycle / scooter parking bays.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for that amendment? I'm happy to second that. Do you wish to speak further to it?
Only that I think we are dealing with a fairly minor shortfall, but I'm comfortable with the applicant's description of how this might be provided for within the floor plates for parking, and also noting that this is an activity centre close to train and bus facilities, that a number of the occupants may indeed not be requiring all of their parking for their individual cars, and therefore I think reallocation and a management process can adequately deal with that shortfall. With that said, presiding member, I support the alternate with that amendment, and I will leave it there.
Thank you. So just as seconder for that amendment, I'm not going to repeat everything that Member Hyde said. I do support what she has said. I guess the amendment proposed would largely bring the parking provision into alignment with the requirements of the activity centre plan. I acknowledge that overall there'd be enough parking, but there'd be a shortfall still for some of the single bed units. But I guess in our quest for more sustainable development and trying to reduce car dependency, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, so I'm happy to support that amendment. Let us vote on that amendment. Do you wish to speak to that?
Yes, I will speak to the amendment. I don't support Amendment 1. My reasons for not supporting it is, whilst I understand the concerns raised by city officers, and I understand the desire to have additional visitor parking, the configuration of this proposal shows tandem parking principally to individual sites with various other single configuration bays that would be removed, reducing parking to the units. My view is, as provided and clarified by city officers today, there is no restriction in the local area for on-street parking. And whilst I appreciate the desire to reduce car dependency, there is the impact on the residential amenity in the surrounding area by encouraging or facilitating on-street parking for residents or looking for bays for residents would outweigh the reduction, in my view, of visitor parking directly on site. I believe that resident parking on site is preferential in this particular instance, and I would acknowledge there are various forms of transportation, both for resident and visitors, but in this particular instance, in this particular location, I think that, and based on this design, I think that the on-site parking for residents should be retained with a discretion for visitor parking.
Thank you. As mover of the amendment, would you like to vote?
Happy to vote, thank you.
Okay, let's put that amendment to the vote. Those in favour? 2. Those against? Thank you. Do you have anything additional you'd like to speak to in the primary motion?
No, I'm happy to leave it there. Thank you, presiding member.
Okay, I'll speak briefly then as seconder to the motion. I'll be supporting the alternate recommendation for approval. I think this is a significant development that will provide much needed residential accommodation in the area. The scale of the building, I think, is commensurate with its location. The additional height is
No, I didn't second the substantive alternatives. I did second the substantive.
Sorry, I thought I had. I did what I've done. Go ahead. I'm very happy for you to go ahead.
Thank you. I support this proposal. Thank you to the officers and to the presenters. There's been a thorough evaluation of the proposal in its site context within the planning framework and the concerns raised. I also thank the city and applicant for the material provided in the documentation we have before us, particularly in relation to addressing the concerns of views. I'm satisfied that the material as provided is appropriate, and I note the information also provided by the city officers in their addressing those particular issues. As has already been mentioned, the site context is appropriate for this type of development. Having reviewed the Canning Bridge Activity Centre plan, I'm satisfied that the documentation provides discretion to be provided in relation to overall height, citing various clauses within the plan. Overall, I think the development, both in its its design, form and scale, is appropriate. I also think that street interaction, particularly at Leonora Street, is a very positive street interaction. It has a nice entranceway coming in via that particular site, and provides nice residential amenity entrance and general amenities in that particular area. Overall, I think it is a positive development to the site.
Thank you. And I'll jump back in where I left off, mistakenly thinking I was seconder. So just on the issue of height, I think the additional height is contemplated by the underlying planning framework and won't, in my opinion, on its own increase any amenity impact on existing residents more than a compliant 8-storey development would. I think it's a high quality design that's been supported by the design review panel and meets the desired outcomes of the activity centre plan and the element objectives of the R codes as they apply. I think we've dealt with parking, so I won't say anything more about that, but I guess I wasn't comfortable with the second reason for refusal. I feel a lot of thought has gone into the proposed waste management arrangements. It's already been used elsewhere without issue, and I certainly wouldn't be able to bring myself to refuse a substantial development like this one based on just that methodology and potential amenity impact on some residents of the subject to development. I think just back to height, we've seen enough in the Responsible Authority report, the responses we've received today, that the current planning framework allows this panel to approve the height as proposed if there's sound planning reason to do so, and I believe there is. And so for that reason, I will be supporting this alternate motion. Would the mover like to close?
Thank you, presiding member, and thank you for the other speakers and the inputs that you have provided. I think, we set these plans up in order to support infill development, but we are moving in challenging times at the moment, and therefore there has been some delay in the start on this particular development, and over time an alternate design has been provided, but I don't see what is before us today to be in any way difficult to accept within the context. In fact, I think it has considered from all angles the context and the amenity levels around it. I think it's a good development and should move forward. And with that, happy to close debate.
Thank you very much. Okay, panel, let us put the alternate recommendation for approval to the vote by a show of hands. Thank you. That's unanimous. Moving on to item 4, Form 2 DAP applications. There are none for South Perth today. Item 5, Section 31, statutory considerations, also none today. That draws to a close Part C of the agenda. I think we are going to just pause the live stream for a couple of minutes that we can welcome our other guests. All right, welcome back, everybody. We needed to take that short break to change from part C of our agenda to part D of the agenda. For this part of the agenda, I'd like to welcome Councillor Fergus Bennett and Councillor Blaine Brackenridge, our local government DAP members from Nedlands, to the panel. Item 1 is declaration of due consideration. Panel members need to have considered all the documentation contained within Part D of the agenda and the Part D related information, noting that an R13 direction response for further information was published on the 3rd of April 2025. Could I please confirm by a show of hands that panel members have considered all information? Thank you. Disclosures of interest. Before I ask members whether they have any interests to disclose, I need to address and place on record a response to a query from a member of the public in relation to a possible interest from Councillor Blaine Brackenridge. The member of the public put forward a view that Councillor Brackenridge has a conflict of interest with this development, as he is the architect for a development diagonally opposite at 5 and 5B Alexander Road and would benefit from the development at 111 Waratah Avenue being approved. In response, Councillor Brackenridge has confirmed that as an architect, he submitted an application for a project at 5 Alexander Road, Dalkeith in October 2020, and development approval was granted in 2023, June 2023. Councillor Brackenridge does not believe he has any conflict of interest that would arise through his participation in this meeting, and does not believe that there is any benefit he would receive through his participation in this meeting through either an approval or refusal of the project. We have reviewed this matter. I'm of the view that there is no conflict that needs to be declared or that would prevent Councillor Brackenridge from bringing an impartial mind to the matter for us. I have not received disclosures of interest to this point. Do any members wish to make declarations of interest in relation to this item? Councillor Bennett.
Yes, thank you. Under clause 2.1.2 of the DAP Code of Conduct, I acknowledge that I am not bound by any previous decision or resolution of the local government. I undertake to exercise independent judgment in relation to any DAP application before me, which I will consider on its planning merits. As a Dalkeith Ward Councillor, I have participated in meetings where this RAR was discussed. I disclose an impartiality interest as the matters are now before the DAP, of which I am an appointed member. I am confident to participate in the DAP meeting impartially without any prior commitment or bias, and will consider any application entirely on its merits as presented to the DAP.
Thank you, Councillor Bennett. I note the standing declaration of interest that if the agenda items have been considered at a council meeting, the local government DAP members acknowledge that they are not bound by any previous decisions or resolution of the local government and undertake to exercise independent judgment in relation to the matters before them. So very happy for you to continue to participate in the meeting. Any other interests? Thank you, Councillor Brackenridge.
Thank you, Presiding Member. I declare that I'm not bound by any previous decision or resolution by the City of Nedlands. And I will exercise independent judgment in relation to this application.
Thank you, Councillor. Same response applies as that I provided to the interest declared by Councillor Bennett. I'm very happy for you to continue to participate in the meeting. Moving then on to item 3, our Form 1 DAP application is in front of us today. Item 3.1, lot 348, number 111, Waratah Avenue, Dalkeith, 5 grouped dwelling development, DAP number 24/02799. We have 3 presenters on this item today. We have Paula Melling, did I pronounce that correctly? Melling, yeah. A local resident speaking for the recommendation in the report. We have Ara Salamone, is that correct? Salamon from State of Kin speaking against the recommendation in the report, and we have Daniela Mercher from Urban Minister Town Planning speaking against the recommendation in the report. All presenters, I remind you that in accordance with clause 482 of the DAP Standing Orders 2024, your presentations are limited to 3 minutes. We've read all the documentation that you have submitted to us, so I encourage you to focus on the key points you want to get across within that 3-minute time frame. I will call you to time when you get to your 3 minutes, and you'll need to wrap up, but panel members will be able to ask any questions of you after your presentation. So with that, Paula, I will hand to you and your time starts.
Fantastic. I'm here today to express serious concerns about the proposed development at 111 Waratah Avenue. This proposal is non-compliant, excessive in scale, and poses significant safety risk to both residents and the broader community. It does not align with the R codes of the city's planning framework, precincts LPP 5.14, disregarding fundamental planning principles. If approved, it will have long-term negative consequences for the character, safety, and livability of our neighbourhood. Number 1, non-compliant setbacks and safety risks. The primary street setback should be 3 metres, yet this proposal allows for only 2 metres, creating a dangerous blind spot for vehicles turning from Shrike Lane onto Waratah Avenue. Secondary street backs are even more concerning. Shrike Lane requires a 2-metre setback, but only 1 metre is provided. Gerrigon Lane requires a 0.5 metre setback, yet this development has none, leaving Lot 5 exposed to passing vehicles. These setbacks are not just non-compliant, they are unsafe. 2, unsafe access, traffic congestion and parking issues. The front doors of 4 homes open directly onto Shrike Lane, an approach entirely out of character with this area. Shrike and Gerrigon lanes are narrow, single-car lanes, never intended for use as primary frontages or heavy pedestrian and vehicle activity. The lack of setbacks restricts space, increasing congestion and safety risk for both pedestrians and drivers. Waste collection will further exacerbate these issues. 10 additional rubbish bins will line the already narrow laneways on collection day, obstructing traffic and creating hazards. Additionally, the development fails to provide the required visitor parking. With no street parking on Waratah Avenue and no options in the lane, congestion will spill into surrounding streets, worsening an already strained parking situation. 3, privacy, amenity and open space concerns. The proposal does not meet compliance for visual privacy, directly overlooking 7 neighbouring properties. The reduced setbacks and increased height means these dwellings will have a direct line of sight into private living spaces and gardens, severely impacting neighbouring residents. The lack of open space further compounds these concerns. The R codes requires 45% open space, yet this development provides as little as 24.8%, far below the requirement. This creates excessive bulk, making it more suitable for an R80 high-density development rather than its actual R40 zoning. If this is to be approved, you may as well throw out the R codes if you're going to allow developments such as this. 4, ignoring expert advice. Even the design review panel stated that the built form and scale were not supported due to inadequate setbacks. They recommended increased setbacks to the laneways, yet that advice was ignored. This proposal prioritises developer profit over resident safety, livability and the integrity of our neighbourhood. It is inconsistent with the R codes and the city's planning framework. Please refuse this proposal. Thank you.
Sorry. Thank you, Paula. Are there any questions of this presenter? Do either of the councillors have a question? Councillor Bennett.
Ms Melling, can you describe the situation with the laneways, the condition they're in and how the community uses them at the moment?
The laneways are currently completely unsealed. There's potholes in them. They're in extremely poor condition. This applies for the entirety of Shrike Lane and Gerrigon lanes. They are only used for rear vehicle access for vehicles, and they are single lane use. It's very narrow. Sometimes my kids and I would like to ride our bikes in them because they weren't trafficked very heavily. However, when we did so, it was dangerous if there were ever any cars coming, because if there was ever a car there was nowhere for you to really go. You'd have to try and duck into a driveway or a garage way or something like that, and wait while a car squeezed past you. They do not support either cars needing to overtake each other, nor do they support shared use by pedestrians and vehicles.
And one more question. Can you describe the housing to the north of the development? I think it's not zoned the same.
Yes, that's correct. So the housing to the north of the development is actually zoned R10. That's along Phillip Road. So they are single family homes, most of them double story. The home directly behind this development is a lovely single story home.
Thank you.
Any other questions, Councillor Brackenridge? Any questions of this presenter?
I just had a planning question, so I'm not sure.
So if it's of this presenter.
Oh, no.
No? All right. Any other panel members?
It was regarding something she said, so.
Did you also all know to refer to my presentation with what it's like to actually drive down there?
Thank you. And that's what the members confirmed by the show of hands, that they had read everything. Thank you, Paula. Our next presenter is Ara Salomon from State of Kin, speaking against the recommendation in the report.
Thank you. Do I just kick off? Okay. Presiding member, panel members and councillors, my name is Ara Solomone and I am co-director at State of Kin, and I'm a registered architect, and we have been working with Sound Developments in Urban Vista on the application for several months now. This is not, okay. Right. The development consists of 5 townhouses, and we have worked really hard to enhance the amenity of both Shrike Lane and Waratah Avenue through strengthening the streetscape connection. The focus through the developer has been on high quality, efficient construction and materials that positively contribute to the local community, as well as providing a place for downsizers and aged in place with a versatile floor plan and design. The proposal has undergone 2 DRP sessions with positive feedback and outcomes, and the project reflects an extensive collaboration among all consultants, including energy efficiency, sustainability, planning, developer, architect, council, and landscape architect and arborist. Most of the building bulk has been directed towards Shrike Lane, minimising the impact on the neighbouring property. And the design preserves the visual character of Waratah Avenue by avoiding the typical via access and garage from the front typology. So, you know, this way we're able to provide extra street trees and greenery where crossovers currently are to Waratah, and the activation of Shrike Lane, including repaving of the road currently, it's just improving what is currently there, which is just a dust road. This is pretty important because the setbacks to Waratah Avenue actually range from 2 to 5 metres, and there are corner truncations on both sides of Shrike Lane to Waratah and to the rear laneway. And the front elevation or setback has been articulated to avoid a uniform facade, improving streetscape appeal. The design curves away from the boundary, creating a clear front entry and enhancing pedestrian experience, and combined setbacks, including the adjacent laneway and neighbouring garages, create a separation of 6 to 9 metres at varying points between the opposite side of Shrike Laneway and our proposal. So there is a lot of varying setback that happens. There's no hard 2 metres, as you can see from the diagram. The garages and crossovers have been designed to minimise visual prominence to Waratah, integrating varied materials and forms to avoid repetitive appearance along the laneway. The layout ensures a visually interesting built form, avoiding a continuous wall effect. Crossovers are located off Shrike Lane, allowing Waratah Avenue frontage to remain uninterrupted and landscaped. And this also enhances the green space and supports the addition of street trees. There's an existing boundary wall along the western neighbour's side that has been retained and integrating, reducing disruption and maintaining the boundary as it currently stands. We have worked with DRP and consultants since July 24 to evolve the development to be in line with the principles of good design as outlined in the SPP 7.0, and you can see every time we have gone, we have achieved more and more.
You're at time, Ira, so I'm going to ask you to bring to a
One
close.
more, I've done. One more, yeah. The open space shortfall is a minor deviation per lot. A tree of significance was preserved by shaping the built form around its root zone and canopy. The design ensures a strong inside-outside connection with high-quality, usable private open spaces, and every dwelling is orientated for optimal access, northern light, private courtyards, and includes an upper level terrace as well. And it has been designed for downsizes and flexibility.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Panel members, does anyone have questions for Ira?
I just had one question about the materials. From the 3D images, it looks like it's face brick. Is that right? So
Yes.
a light coloured.
A combination of light coloured face brick, which has either been soldier coursed or stack bonded. So there is a pattern change that happens over different sides of the building to just create a bit of visual interest as well as texture and tactile interest.
Thank you.
Councillor Bennett.
Thank you. Hello.
Hello.
Can you describe what are the conditions of the WAPC subdivision proposal?
I can speak to that. That's okay, presiding member. Conditions are generally standard. One of the conditions that potentially ordinarily would be put on a subdivision adjacent to a right-of-way is right-of-way widening. However, that condition has not been applied to the subdivision. So where the boundary sits along Shrike Lane and Regal Lane, I think that's how you, Lane, is how it is approved in the subdivision. And I would also like to clarify, which I've mentioned in my speech, but I may as well do now, it is a green title subdivision, as Shrike Lane is a dedicated road.
Thank you. Just on, any other questions, Councillor Bennett?
Yes, so I thought I read somewhere in the report that there was a condition that the laneways are sealed.
Yes, apologise. Yes, one of the conditions is that the laneway is required to be upgraded, to be sealed and drained. And I understand the civil engineer is currently working with the city to determine exactly what that finish will be.
And is that both Shrike and Jerrygon Lane? So it forms just
Shrike up to
from what I understand, it's just Shrike Lane.
Yeah, up to the end of
and that which is as per the condition.
Okay.
Any other questions, Councillor Bennett?
I also read that the conditional WAPC approval mentions something about no requirement for a car park. Did the WAPC say that?
Yep, that's correct. Because it is a green title development and we're creating 5 single houses, there's no need for a visitor car bay as there are any for group dwellings.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So, Ira, just going on from what was just said now, you refer to them as townhouses in your presentation. Have you designed these dwellings as group dwellings or as single houses?
Single houses.
Thank you. Any other panel members?
Thank you. Just going back to the landscape, could you remind me of what the deep soil area is?
Sure. So each lot varies slightly, but they are roughly 225 square metres each. So at the moment, we vary between 44% and 36% open space. Part of that is deep soil. So the deep soil for each lot varies between 16% and 12%, depending on which lot it is.
Okay, and you make reference to the mature tree that you're retaining. I can see that that's in a sort of a courtyard location, but from what I'm reading on the plans, there's a wall that runs along 2 sides of it. How have you assessed maintaining the health and ability for that tree to thrive?
So the arborist has been involved with us from the outset of this project before we even started designing. The fence separating lot 4 and lot 5 can't be a brick fence. It needs to be some sort of aluminium style fence, so it can't go deep into its root. But there is an existing footing that runs along the side of that boundary where the existing boundary wall is also that extends further. This would need to be looked at further in building licence, but the route, there has been a report done on what is possible and what's not possible, and the arborist is fairly confident that it will remain as it is and just extend on from it.
Yeah, okay. And just to go back to the presiding members' questions, there's no common walls in this at all. They're freestanding.
Yep. So they're all double cavity either side of the boundary with a separate construction between. So no, they're not touching.
Okay, thank you for that.
Any questions?
No, my only question, I think you've already answered it. You referred to Shrike Lane as being the status as a gazetted road. I did go down and drive up and down those little lanes, so I'm familiar with what you're explaining. But so it's a dedicated public road.
Thank you. Yep.
Thank you very much, Ara. Daniela Mudra, our last presenter today, speaking against the recommendation in the report. Daniela, I'll just leave that up.
Thank you, presiding member. Okay, first and foremost, I would like to highlight the overwhelming support this proposal has received from the city's design review panel. Their endorsement is a clear reflection of the development's high standard of design and its careful consideration of the existing and future context of the area. The development, situated prominently on the corner of Waratah Avenue and Shrike Lane, a dedicated road, represents a thoughtful and well-resolved design response to the growing demand for diverse, high-quality housing in the area. One of the most notable aspects of this proposal is its commitment to retaining a large mature tree on the property, a lemon-scented gum, which stands at an impressive 30 metres in height. The preservation of this tree is a key feature of the development and one that speaks to the importance of maintaining the natural environment within the urban setting. With respect to the land tenure, we've already talked about that. Let's move on, sorry. Okay, turning to the city's RAR, the city recommends that the development should be refused primarily based on non-compliance with street setbacks and open space. With respect to the proposed open space on the lots, we are under no illusion that the development proposes a sizable deemed to comply variation. However, it is evident that the proposal satisfies the design principles of the R codes by ensuring that each lot provides a large, usable outdoor area and significant areas of landscaping. Furthermore, in addition to these generous ground level outdoor spaces, each dwelling incorporates secondary open space on the upper floor, enhancing livability and producing additional recreational areas for residents. This sentiment is largely accepted by the city's RAR, where on page 13 of the agenda, the RAR suggests that 3 of the 5 design principles have been satisfied. It is therefore apparent that this recommendation for refusal is based simply on numbers. It is essential that this development is considered through the lens of more modern urban planning principles, where there is a move away from individual quantitative assessments. The development has been commended by a panel of prestigious architects who consider the proposal based on principles of good design as adopted by the state government. It would really go against all the work that has been done in this space if this development was refused simply based on the numbers. With respect to the street setbacks, the RAR raises concerns regarding inconsistencies with existing and desired streetscape character due to street setback variations along Shrike Lane. However, we believe a development located towards the laneway with minimal setback only enhances the laneway interface while delivering a high quality built form outcome. Further, by pushing the development towards Shrike Lane enables the western boundary to remain open and therefore reduce any impacts of bulk and scale on the only abutting neighbour. In regards to the R13, I understand that the city provided an alternative recommendation for deferral. As I understand it, the city has not met their obligations as the responsible authority, as they are required to provide a determination, and a deferral is not a determination.
You're at time, Danielle.
Can I just finish up? Okay, thank you. Notwithstanding, we have provided the DAP our comments relating to potential conditions based on the comments provided in the RAR, and this is provided in the package of related information. In conclusion, we believe this development will be a valuable addition to the area and respectfully ask the DAP to consider an alternative recommendation for approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniela. Before I hand to the rest of the panel members for questions, I just had a question. The application form you submitted with the DA describes the development as group dwellings functioning as single houses. The planning report that you submitted as part of the DA specifically references single dwellings, green title lots and independent lots. Are these dwellings single houses or brick dwellings?
They are single houses because A, there's no common property, and B, that it's been approved as green title lots.
Okay, thank you for that. Panel members, any questions of this presenter?
No. No, that's clear.
Okay, thank you for that. Thank you for those presenters. We also have our local government officers with us in the room today. We have Kirsty Klimka, I hope I thank you. And Sergio Famiano with us today from the City of Nedlands. Please have a seat. Panel members, do you have any questions of the city officers? I have a few, but I will hand to the other panel members first. Local government panel members, any questions of the city officers? Councillor Bennett.
Hello. Just with regards to the WAPC subdivision application, did the city make any comment or objection to that proposed subdivision to the WAPC?
I believe we were working with the applicant back and forth regarding specifically waste at the time. Our tech services team did come to an agreement with them regarding the waste, so that was kind of sorted out in that it will probably be an inside service agreement because the laneway is quite narrow. We did recommend the condition of laneway widening and for the ceiling of the laneway, which the WAPC only conditioned the ceiling and they didn't condition the widening.
Okay. So you didn't object to the actual layout of the subdivision at all?
It met the minimum site area requirement. We probably would have preferred a consolidated access, but it is off of the laneway, so yeah.
Just one more question. Lot 5, lot 1 is designed slightly different, has a different layout to the other lots because it's addressing Waratah Avenue. But lot 5, which is kind of in a similar situation where it's on the intersection of 2 access ways, so to speak, that doesn't have the same kind of treatment in terms of having landscaping around that edge. It's a very abrupt, so it's a wall almost directly on the edge of a laneway, and the upper story isn't set back very far. Does that seem a bit inconsistent that lot 1 has a certain treatment and lot 5 is kind of almost treated like it's abutting another house rather than against a laneway?
Look, it is a laneway, which is different to a primary street, but I think it goes to the heart of what the issue is here with this particular development, and that is the open space requirement is so deficient in this development that almost every square metre of floor space is taken up by building bulk. So there is no, as you can see with that elevation to Gregory Lane, it's basically one big wall across it, and that's because from the perspective of the city, and I would argue the R codes, that the overdevelopment of this site is proven quite readily by that elevation. It's a pity we don't have that elevation up again, because to me it's all building. You don't see much greenery there. It's all building bulk. And you know, the elevation from Gregory Lane will be just that. It'll just be one big flat wall.
With regards to the private open space sort of courtyards, wouldn't they be sort of overshadowed by the building bulk directly to the north of them? So basically what I'm asking is that will they actually get a significant amount of sunlight? Because the plans are laid out not north-south, so if you actually rotate it to the north, then light coming from the north would suggest that the upper story of the building to the north of them would actually overshadow those public open spaces. I'm not sure if that was considered.
Yeah, well, again, it comes back to if you had a development that actually was developed closer to what the intent is for this particular area, and I have to remind the panel members, this is zoned R40. It's designed to be a particular type of development. That's why the R codes requires a 45% open space requirement. These units, most of them have 23%. It's extremely low. If you go to any local government, they'd be glad to offer a 2 to 5% variation based on design, but not a 20%, not a 50%, sorry, variation. And you're right, because of the bulk of this development, because almost every square inch of it is taken up by built form, it will create issues that you just mentioned.
And just one final question. If these were, if this lot was already subdivided and each individual lot had a single house development application, would it be assessed differently to the way it's been assessed?
Well, I guess it would be a single house for each. You'd have an application for each, but because of the variations that are being sought, you require a development approval for each. You can't escape that. That's a major issue.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bennett. Any other questions from panel members for the city staff?
We heard from the applicant that they're proposing these to be single houses on single lots. The city's assessed them as a group development. I just wonder if you could provide an explanation as to why you assess them as a group development versus the 5 singles, which would have required 5 separate applications.
Well, the lots aren't created yet. So when at the time the development application comes in, it's basically on a single lot. So we don't have lots created yet, so we can't assess it as single residential dwellings.
So you base it on the subdivision as it currently is, rather
Correct,
than
yeah.
what's approved. And the plans though, but the plans show individual houses.
What do you mean by that, sorry?
Well, the plans demonstrate that these are to be individual houses ultimately on green title lots.
They could be, yep.
Well, that's, I think, what the applicant's report is saying. That's what the applicant has told us this morning.
Yeah, but the applicant also submitted the application saying they were group dwellings as well.
I see.
Yeah. So there's a
Thank
bit
you.
of a incongruence there.
So can I just follow up on that to get absolute clarity for this panel? Your RA refers to the proposal as 5 group dwellings, but as per my questions to the applicant earlier, some of their documentation talks about single houses or single dwellings. Just to clarify, have you assessed the proposal as single houses under Part B of the codes, or is group dwellings under Part C? Under Part C, okay. So you've assessed them. So what happens when the titles are issued? Would the houses then comply with Part B requirements for single houses if they've been assessed under Part C?
There's a few minor differences for lot boundary setbacks for parking. So parking wouldn't be a requirement. They wouldn't require a visitor parking bay.
Okay.
Am I able to make any comment relating to that?
No, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine, thank you.
So I think just on that, there were discussions between the city and the applicant regarding how it's to be assessed. Originally, obviously, yeah, it's lodged as group dwellings functioning as single houses, but until the titles have been cleared, although they have approval, it's only conditional approval. They haven't acted on that approval, so they could never act on that, and then there's 5 lots on one current lot. That's why the city is under the impression that it should be assessed against Part C.
Okay.
Some more questions? Just one more. So if retrospectively the green title subdivision comes into effect, can each individual lot be sold and built, sold separately, built at different times? And if any conditions apply to this development application as a group dwelling, how will those conditions work when they're being built and sold separately?
right, then it would most likely require a separate development application. If someone's sold the lot and they're designing a new house, that would require a separate DA with separate conditions.
Thank you.
I have a question regarding your ground floor plan, and we've had information provided in the RA as well as a presentation to A about the functionality of both of the lanes. I note on the plan, lot 5 shows a garage hard up against the boundary of the lot and therefore the lane. Your report indicates that the reduced setbacks does not impact the proposed vehicle manoeuvrability. Can you just clarify functionality of those lanes? And I am talking both in context of what you said and what we heard today. And particularly the turning of those lanes where they intersect.
So they have provided the truncation, the 2x2 truncation there at the corner. And obviously that garage is set back further than the rest, being 2 meters. So they do achieve a 6 meter manoeuvrability. And with the truncation, they would be able to achieve certain paths.
And there's no requirement for Gurgoyne Lane widening or access or movement through that area?
Not widening, no. I mean, as we said, we try to condition that through the subdivision. So we can't get laneway widening, but that would generally probably just sort of apply to street lane, trike lane.
Thank you. That was my question.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions and they're more procedural if you don't mind. So on page 12 of the RA, there's a comment. Should the DAP decide to approve the development, conditions for approval have been recommended to address the issue of visual privacy. But there was no alternate and there were no conditions of approval in the RA, were there?
Yeah, that's my fault.
No, that's okay. I'm not asking whose fault. I'm just in case I missed something.
From my perspective, I was looking at conditions that we could try and put to try and approve this, but I found it very, very difficult to do that. And the reason why is because the conditions that we'd be putting in place would effectively require a redesign of the application. I mean, if you apply a 45% or even a 40% open space requirement, for example, to this development, and you start to also look at some of the setback issues, which are generous, by the way. Our precinct 5.14 policy is quite generous when it comes to setbacks. And when you take that into consideration with the issues that are around overlooking, and every one of these developments have an issue with overlooking, which is a big issue for our community, you would have to redesign or redesign large parts of this development. So I just found it very, very difficult to put together conditions to recommend approving when the recommendation basically saying you need to redesign most of this development.
Thank you for that explanation. And I guess that, can I just confirm that I'm assuming that's why the city elected not to provide the DAP Secretariat with an alternate recommendation for approval with condition as per our R13 request that was sent over a week ago. And I'm assuming therefore that that's why you have provided instead an alternate for deferral rather than the approval with conditions that were requested. Is that correct?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay. So I guess, and this is just for clarity, when the DAP asks for an alternate recommendation for approval, we're not necessarily asking for an alternate recommendation with conditions to bring the development into compliance. We're asking for conditions to address any issues you may want to see addressed if we were to approve it. That's for future reference, but you've answered my question, so thank you for that. I think we have asked enough questions, so I think we're going to move to the report now. And for the clarity of all members, I will be now seeking a mover and seconder for the recommendation for refusal for the planning reasons mentioned that are contained in the City of Nedlands' responsible authority report. Do I have a mover and seconder for that recommendation for refusal? No. Okay, that recommendation then lapses for want of a mover of the recommendation. There are two options to proceed now. One is to put an alternate recommendation on the table. We could put the alternate recommendation for deferral that the city has provided us. We could attempt to construct a recommendation for approval with conditions which we would need to do ourselves. Or I would like to move an alternate recommendation to refuse the application on the basis that the proposal is for 5 single houses, that each single house is an excluded development application under Regulation 6.2 of the DAP regulations, meaning that this DAP does not have the jurisdiction to consider this proposal. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Seconded, Councillor Bennett. The wording, I guess, of the motion would be that the DAP refuses, and there's the preamble that will go with that, but that the DAP refuses the application because, first dot point, the DA comprises 5 single houses, each of which falls within the defined meaning of a single house under the R codes. And point 2, each single house is an excluded development application under Regulation 6.2 of the Planning and Development Assessment Panels Regulations 2011, meaning that the DAP does not have jurisdiction to consider the proposal. Although the city's RA describes the proposal as group dwellings, and it appears they've largely been assessed as group dwellings, the application form describes the development as group dwellings functioning as single houses. The planning report submitted by the applicant specifically references single dwellings, green title lots and independent lots. And we've heard from the applicant presenters today that the intent for this development as designed and submitted to this panel is for these to be single houses. When we consider development proposals, we need to take into account all relevant facts of a DA as a whole, including the applicant's Form 1 supporting reports and plans. We don't just take into account the responsible authority report provided by the local government. When I look at all the information that's been provided to us, it is my view that this development is designed as 5 single houses on independent lots, each with their own access to the street. There's nothing in the design of these dwellings to suggest that they're integrated group dwellings. I feel, therefore, that what we have before us is an excluded development application and we have no jurisdiction to consider it. Given this, we could just decline to make any decision, but if we don't make a decision, the application would be deemed refused without any reason. So instead, I recommend we refuse the application because the DA comprises 5 single houses and each single house is an excluded development application under our regs, meaning we don't have jurisdiction to consider it. Councillor Bennett, as seconder, do you wish to speak further to this proposed
Yes, thank you.
alternate?
Yes, so in support of what the presiding members just said, planning schemes should be read as a whole and applied in a practical and common sense and not an overly technical way, and in a fashion which best achieves their evident purpose. And clearly here, the intention is to have 5 individual green title lots with 5 individual single dwellings on them. The fact that the subdivision is conditional and technically hasn't happened yet is exactly that. It's a technicality. The intention is still there to subdivide it. The plans show individual lots labelled. The application describes the development application as a group dwelling application of 5 single houses. No, I don't believe any conditions can be applied to make 5 individual houses to be treated as a group dwelling so that the DAP can actually decide on it. So the fact that the intent of this is to create 5 single houses makes it an excluded development application that the DAP is not authorised to preside over. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Are there any other members that wish to speak for or against this alternate motion? Member
Happy
Hyde.
to speak to the motion. I support the motion. I too have reviewed the applicant's application and the plans associated with it and the applicant's report, WAPC subdivision, as well as the RAR. And this is not, in my opinion, a grouped dwelling application, and question time to the applicant that's confirmed. These are single homes intended for individual lots. It's not consistent with the definition of a group dwelling. There's nothing that is common in the design deliberately. And whilst I appreciate the assessment that the city has done and the city has brought to our attention a number of matters which grouped or single houses need to be cognizant of, and some shortcomings, I find that the matter before us is outside of our jurisdiction, and therefore I agree with the presiding member that in order to give some clarity around the decision that we're making, we need to explain that we find this to be single properties intended for green title lots, and therefore falls outside of the DAP's provisions to grant an approval. Thank you.
Thank you. Does any other member wish to speak for or against this alternative?
I will speak to the recommendation. Having viewed all of the plans, listened to the applicant's presentation and material, as well as the material provided in the RAR, I have considered that. I've also considered the provisions set out in the Planning and Development Act 2005, particularly in relation to the functions of DAP, and it's for reference section 71718. I also referenced that against the DAP regulations, particularly DAP regulation 6 and regulation 4, which is definitions, to get myself clear about what was going on. And this talks about excluded development and single houses excluded development. Review of the plans that I have given, a clarification that's specifically been provided today. I'm satisfied that further consideration of this application is outside of our jurisdiction, and therefore I can't support it based on jurisdictional reasons.
Thank you. Does any other member wish to speak? Okay, as mover, I have nothing further to add. I think it's pretty clear the sentiment of the panel in this regard. So I therefore put the alternate motion for refusal simply because this DAP does not have jurisdiction to determine the applications for single houses. Let's put that recommendation to a vote by show of hands. For those in favour? It's carried unanimous. Item 4, Form 2 DAP applications. There are none for the City of Nedlands. Item 5, Section 31 SAT reconsiderations, also none today. Part E, other business. Item 1, SAT applications and Supreme Court appeals. All SAT applications for the DAP and all DAPs are listed on the DAP website. With that, I declare the meeting closed at 1:01 p.m. and thank everyone for it.
Thank you.
Thank you.